player allegations. Jason Kidd's past is one the NBA would rather toss in a closet and slam the door shut. Back in 2001, he pleaded guilty to harm his then wife. The league and media gave it attention at the time, sure, but later allegations that painted a much darker, long-term pattern of violence got buried fast. When Kidd jumped into coaching, the NBA chose to focus on a so-called redemption arc, barely mentioning the more severe accusations tied to his divorce in 2007. That was no accident. Admitting to sweeping that under the rug would unravel the league's carefully polished image. Chauncey Billups' story is another one that stays quietly shelved. In 1997, he and others were accused of SA. Civil settlement followed, but the details kept conveniently vague. When Billups was being considered for head coach, teams claimed they did their homework, but they didn't speak to the accuser or even the district attorney. Why? Because digging deeper would have made things way messier. Silver's silence isn't just about one coach, it's about controlling the fallout. Admitting this would mean confronting the fact that people in power kept those accusations quiet to protect business interests. The pattern is simple. Legal action wraps up, and the NBA moves fast to steer the story into obscurity. No clear policy, no transparency. Just damage control dressed up as resolution. And every time it happens, it sends the same message. The brand matters more than full accountability. Silver won't touch that truth, because opening that door means more cases come crawling out, and the league's shiny surface starts to crack. Zion marketing push. The league never said it out loud, but their actions made it crystal clear. Zion was the chosen one. When he entered the league in 2019, they rolled out cameras, headlines, and promos like he was basketball royalty. That Zion came during his college days wasn't just for fun, it was a setup for a bigger marketing plan. Even major outlets jumped on it, saying he brought spark back after Kobe's death. The timing couldn't have been more convenient for a league needing a new American superstar. Adam Silver kept quiet, but every all-star push and branding deal made the strategy obvious. Then the injuries piled up. A torn meniscus, a fractured foot, and more bone issues than a game of operation. Zion was in and out of lineups so much that the league's dream of consistency started falling apart. The NBA never publicly addressed how risky that was, but the silence said enough. They bet big and crossed their fingers. Things didn't stop there. In 2025, he was suspended for missing team flights and practices. Then came a lawsuit with heavy claims. Great harmful behavior, stalking. He denied them, but the league clammed up fast. You won't find press conferences about that. And the weight, he topped 300 pounds during one season. Everyone noticed, but in league promos, it was all about strength, never struggle. That narrative needed to stay polished. Adam Silver won't admit any of it because doing so pulls back the curtain. It means facing the fact that they built a brand around a player who couldn't stay healthy, faced serious allegations, and struggled with conditioning. That kind of mistake, it dents the image, threatens trust, and invites questions they really don't want to answer. Retired player mental health. The NBA's made real progress supporting active players, but once they leave the league, that care vanishes fast. Larry Sanders walked away from over $40 million, not because of injury, but because anxiety made playing unbearable. He had full body cramps from stress and said support from the league was basically non-existent. Michael Beasley later echoed the same thing. He felt abandoned. All the slogans, campaigns, and resources just stopped applying. Then there's Royce White. Diagnosed with anxiety, he demanded formal policies to protect mental health. The league wouldn't budge. He left. And to this day, he calls their programs shallow. Not one of these guys got help once they weren't generating highlights anymore. Sure, the NBA made moves. Teams hired mental health staff, and the union launched wellness departments. But all of that is just for current players. Once guys retire, it's blood pressure checks, not trauma counseling. The Retired Players Association doesn't offer structured mental wellness programs. It's a gap no one in the front office talks about. Why wouldn't Adam Silver admit it? Because the NBA brands itself as socially responsible, saying they dropped the ball after careers and ruins that image. It also opens them up to lawsuits or pressure to fund lifetime mental health coverage, something they clearly don't want to budget for. Even worse, sponsors expect the league to care about players. They don't want to be associated with emotional abandonment, so the league says nothing. Meanwhile, former stars deal with anxiety, depression, and isolation in silence. That's the hidden cost. Mental health fades from priority the moment players stop selling tickets. And for the league, that silence is a strategy. LeBron, rule bending. There's no smoking gun, but the NBA's treatment of LeBron has always carried a strange kind of glow. He shaped the league's culture for over a decade. And while the league hasn't officially said LeBron gets different rules, it's what they don't say that keeps the whispers going. It started with the decision in 2010. He flipped the power dynamic, created a super team, and the NBA didn't blink. No penalties, no public pushback, just a spike in ratings and a marketing bonanza. Now take tampering. LeBron's made public calls for players to join him, like Anthony Davis. He's done it on live broadcasts, social media, and interviews. Not once fined. Meanwhile, Magic Johnson got slapped with penalties for just blinking at Paul George. That double standard has been loud. His voice didn't just matter. It directed the league's next move. He even trashed the play-in tournament idea, then played in it, and the format stayed because, surprise, it worked for ratings. Off the court, it's more smoke. He rarely gets hard media criticism. Networks like ESPN barely touch sensitive topics. Past controversies, either ignored or downplayed. It's not censorship, but it's curated comfort. Ref calls, every star gets leeway, but the calls that don't happen around LeBron speak louder than the ones that do. It's perception that builds the legend. Adam Silver won't ever admit it because LeBron's commercial gravity is too strong. Admitting preferential treatment would undermine years of carefully crafted league neutrality. And in the NBA, appearances are currency. Media intimidation. The NBA loves the look of transparency, but behind the curtain, it's a whole different play. Multiple journalists have made it clear. If you push too hard on the wrong topic or the wrong player, your access dries up faster than a timeout clock. Ethan Strauss, written for ESPN and The Athletic, said he got iced out after criticizing LeBron and the Warriors. Not subtle. Team officials reportedly told editors to keep him away, and suddenly, the invites stopped coming. Then there's Rachel Nichols. She was one of ESPN's top NBA voices, but after a private conversation surfaced, one that touched on favoritism and diversity, she was suddenly out. ESPN made it look internal, but insiders say league power brokers nudged that shift along. It was too convenient to be coincidence. Chris Palmer said the quiet part out loud. He criticized how the league handled race-related issues and later said he got blacklisted. Meanwhile, Dave Zirin has been writing for years about how NBA reporters are expected to toe the league's line or risk being frozen out. Here's how they do it. The NBA controls playoff access. If a journalist wants credentials for marquee events, they better keep the tone favorable. They lean on partners like ESPN and Turner Sports to shape what gets airtime. And most beat writers, their careers depend on getting into the building. No access, no interviews, no job. Adam Silver will never admit this pressure campaign exists. It would mean acknowledging the league maintains control by quietly punishing dissent. The NBA's public face may be inclusive and open, but the media strategy behind it? Silent, sharp, and absolutely calculated. Private prison ties. The NBA says it's all about justice and reform, but some of its owners have portfolios that tell a very different story. Dan DeVos, chairman of the Orlando Magic, is part of the DeVos family. Yes, that DeVos fam. They've had major investments in companies that provide tech and infrastructure to immigration detention centers. Not exactly a coincidence. Then there's Josh Harris. He used to own the Philadelphia franchise and co-founded Apollo Global Management, a firm that invested in GEO Group, which happens to be one of the largest private prison operators in the country. That's not some fringe investment. It's a key player in the incarceration business. Ron Burkle, who's had ownership ties to the Sacramento franchise, also had investment connections that touch the corrections industry. The money doesn't always come directly from the teams, but these owners are not exactly removed from the system. It's not just prison buildings, it's surveillance tech, medical services, even phone contracts for inmates. These companies make money off incarceration, and the same owners cash the checks. Meanwhile, the NBA puts Black Lives Matter on the court and runs promos about racial justice. Adam Silver will never address this because saying it out loud would mean admitting that some of the league's most powerful figures profit from a system that the league claims to oppose. It's not just a bad look. It's a contradiction so massive, it undercuts every campaign the NBA's launched since 2020. The silence isn't confusion, it's calculated. This isn't about mixed messaging. It's about money, image, and pretending the two don't crash into each other behind the scenes. PED, silence, the NBA's clean image on performance-enhancing drugs. That's not the result of zero use. It's the result of keeping it quiet. Unlike other leagues that have had full-blown scandals, the NBA somehow dodged all that smoke. Not a single major PED bust in its history. The few players suspended, like O.J. Mayo, Tyreek Evans, Jody Meeks, and Joakim Noah, got hit for vague violations, not explosive steroid revelations. It's a stat line that doesn't add up. Blood testing for human growth hormone didn't even start until 2015. By then, baseball and football were already handing out suspensions like Halloween candy. David Stern, back in 2012, casually said PEDs were on our radar, but the league made no effort to investigate further. Testing is limited by the collective bargaining agreement, meaning players have windows to cycle off substances before checks. Insiders have raised eyebrows for years. Charles Barkley has questioned the silence. George Karl straight up said in his book that some players were clearly using something. His words, obvious to anyone paying attention, but the league hasn't budged. Here's why Adam Silver won't talk about it. Acknowledging the problem means rewriting the NBA's polished narrative. If they admit a blind spot that big, it challenges everything from records to reputations. PED suggests fraud, and fraud scares sponsors, so they keep the system tight, the tests soft, and the media tone cheerful. No need for headlines that might stain the league's golden image. The silence isn't proof of innocence, it's the safest strategy they've got. Yao Ming diplomacy. When Yao entered the NBA in 2002, he wasn't just a 7'6" center, he was the league's direct pipeline into China. His draft status alone set off a media storm, and the NBA rode that wave straight into one of the world's biggest markets. Viewership in China exploded. Jersey sales off the charts. And every all-star vote he racked up was part basketball, part international strategy. Then things got more political. After retirement, Yao didn't just disappear. He became chairman of the Chinese Basketball Association, which isn't just a sports gig. It's a government-controlled position that gave him real pull. When Daryl Morey tweeted support for Hong Kong in 2019, the CBA under Yao suspended ties with the Rockets. That wasn't a coincidence. It was a clear message. Yao's reaction? Silence. He didn't back the NBA, didn't attack it either. He played it safe because speaking up could have fractured the exact balance he represented. Meanwhile, the NBA said nothing critical about him or the CBA. Why? Because they couldn't afford to. Too much money was on the line. Adam Silver won't admit it, but the league's entire presence in China has hinged on Yao's influence. He became the bridge, the buffer, and the shield. China got prestige. The NBA got access, and both sides learned how useful one man could be when nobody asked too many questions. Yao isn't just a basketball legend, he's a key to the NBA's most complicated international relationship. And that's not a story the league wants picked apart. Gambling influence. The NBA swears it's got integrity, but the receipts tell a different story. The league's biggest gambling scandal came with Tim Donaghy, a ref who bet on games he officiated from 2003 to 2007. He got over $300,000 and passed inside info to bookies. The league's response? Call him a rogue, slap a prison sentence on him, and pretend that fixed everything. But that wasn't the end. It was just the first crack. Scott Foster, another ref, made over 100 calls to Donaghy during that same period. He never got charged, but his name keeps showing up in suspicious context. Players have even thrown shade mid-game with gestures about money, hinting at something deeper. It gets worse with players. Bisley is under federal investigation for sketchy prop bet activity tied to his own games. Terry Rozier, federal documents flagged 30 bets on his performance within just 46 minutes. That's not casual gambling, that's a pattern. Then there's John Tay Porter. He gave health info to bettors, underperformed on purpose, and let a friend cash in. The league banned him for life in 2024, but the damage was already done. Adam Silver won't touch this publicly. Admitting the league has a gambling problem means risking billions in sportsbook partnerships, sponsor confidence, and legal scrutiny. So every scandal gets labeled an outlier, not a warning sign. The truth? Gambling is embedded in the league's structure, from refs to players to team staff. But the league's silence isn't cluelessness, it's self-preservation. The more they minimize it, the more control they keep over the growing chaos. China censorship. In 2019, Daryl Morey posted 7 words that set the NBA on fire. Fight for freedom. Stand with Hong Kong. China reacted instantly. State-run broadcasters pulled Houston games. Major sponsors bailed, and even Rockets vanished from Chinese platforms. The Chinese Basketball Association, led by Yao Ming, cut ties with the team almost overnight. The NBA was staring at a crisis worth hundreds of millions. Then came the league's response, a statement calling Morey's tweet regrettable, but the version written in Chinese, even harsher. They called it inappropriate and disappointing. The Rockets distanced themselves. Morey deleted the tweet. Everyone moved fast, and the silence from the players and media wasn't subtle. It was coordinated. ESPN reportedly told staff not to discuss the issue on air. A clear message rippled through the league. Keep your head down or risk your future. Adam Silver later tried to balance it out, saying the league values free speech, but also respects international differences. It sounded neutral, but the subtext was clear. China is too important to lose. The league's growth strategy relies on the Chinese market, and one tweet threatened the entire pipeline. Silver won't admit it, but the response wasn't about diplomacy, it was damage control. The NBA didn't just flinch, it surrendered, and by doing so, it gave a foreign government leverage over its speech. That's the part they'd rather no one bring up, because if the world sees that one tweet can shut down an entire league's backbone, then the next question becomes, Who's really running the show when the money's this deep? Private investigators. It sounds like a spy movie subplot, but NBA teams have actually done it. Hired real private investigators to follow their own players. Phil Jackson, during his time with New York, reportedly had Kristaps Porzingis watched to track his nightlife habits. Not exactly subtle, but definitely calculated. Former Suns exec Amin El-Hassan didn't even blink when asked. He said teams use investigators all the time, especially when big contracts or draft picks are on the line. David Falk, a longtime agent, backed that up too. He said teams absolutely dig into players' personal lives if there's even a whiff of trouble. And Jackie McMullen reported that some franchises even scouted a rookie's reputation at clubs and parties before the draft. It's not just background checks, it's actual surveillance. Why would teams go this far? Simple. They're protecting $100 million investments. One bad headline or viral video can turn a franchise's season upside down. So they gather intel. Off the books, off the rec. It's about managing risk, not trust. Adam Silver would never talk about this. The league pushes player empowerment and openness, but tailing athletes through private surveillance sends the opposite message. Admitting it would trigger backlash from players, agents, and the union. It would also raise serious privacy questions the league doesn't want to answer, so the practice stays in the shadow, quiet, discreet, and highly effective. And if a player ever wonders how a rumor made it to the front office, well, someone was probably watching, and they weren't wearing team colors. Load management tactics. NBA teams have been gaming the system for years. And yes, the league knows. When national television cameras are rolling, stars magically appear in the lineup. The next night, against a small market team on local broadcast, suddenly it's knee soreness or injury maintenance. These labels aren't random, they're shields. Saying DNP-rest used to invite fines. Now it's all about language. Vague medical terms keep the league happy and the players fresh. In 2017, the Spurs, Cavaliers, and Warriors all got hit with fines for sitting healthy stars during national broadcasts. That's when the pattern got too obvious to ignore. The league tried to patch it up with rules, and by 2023, they had a player participation policy on the books. But teams just got smarter. Insiders admit to crafting soft injury reports to sidestep the policy. It's not deception, it's strategy. Adam Silver even said it himself. This is a problem, not just because fans are missing stars, but because broadcasters pay billions for those big matchups. If LeBron, Steph, or Giannis sits during a primetime game, it's not just disappointing, it's bad for business. So teams walk a tightrope. They show up for the spotlight, then duck out the next night to preserve bodies for the long haul. No one's faking injuries exactly, but they're absolutely massaging the truth. And Silver, he's not about to admit how widespread the manipulation is because it pulls the curtain back on how much the league's calendar revolves around optics, not just competition. Bubble, COVID suppression. The NBA sold the Orlando bubble as a flawless public health triumph. 0 cases, full containment, perfect execution. But behind the press releases and staged Zoom interviews, insiders tell a different story. According to multiple staffers, anyone who tested positive or even came back inconclusive was quietly removed before being officially in the bubble. That way, the NBA could still say with a straight face that no one tested positive inside the zone. Testing partners reportedly used the term inconclusive, like a get out of reporting free card. If a case looked questionable, it got retested quietly, and if needed, the person disappeared without much fuss. No confirmation, no headlines, just one less person on the chart. Journalists stationed in the bubble said their movement was monitored, and not just for health reasons. Interviews were restricted. Questions about protocol breaches or test inconsistencies steered away or outright denied. The NBA controlled the optics down to the pixel. Adam Silver would never admit this, of course. The league had billions riding on those games. TV deals, ad revenue, and global brand visibility. If even a whisper of a serious outbreak had gone public, the bubble would have popped. Instead, they built a narrative of perfection. But perfection doesn't usually need this much image control. The silence wasn't science, it was strategy. And while the league never broke the rules outright, they certainly bent the narrative to make sure the only thing contagious in the bubble was the idea that everything went exactly to plan. Voting, bias. The NBA loves to pretend All-Star and MVP honors are all about performance, but let's be real. It's just as much about headlines, hashtags, and market size. All-Star starters, chosen by fans, media, and players. In that order, which means the guy with the slickest highlights and the most jersey sales usually wins, no matter how efficient or impactful someone else might be in, say, Indiana. Guys like Devin Booker, Mike Conley, and Drew Holiday have had seasons that deserve far more recognition, but played for teams without a glitzy zip code. And if you're not on ESPN 3 nights a week, good luck getting love from casual fans or voting media. Now take MPV voting. It's supposed to reward the best player, but it usually rewards the best story. Steve Nash won back-to-back MVPs without dominating the box score or leading the league in wins, because the offensive genius narrative was too good to resist. Russell Westbrook averaged a triple-double and got the trophy, even though his team was 6th in the West. Then Nikola Jokic kept up MVP numbers in 2023, but got hit with voter fatigue and narrative pushback. Adam Silver won't admit this, because the league wants fans to believe awards reflect merit, not media cycles. But behind the scenes, team PR, market exposure, and personal storylines shape outcomes. It's not a broken system. It's a theater production, and the loudest, brightest characters usually get the final curtain call. Lakers favoritism. The early 2000s might have been peak entertainment, but if you were a Kings or Blazers fan, it felt more like scripted drama. Western Conference Finals between the Lakers and Kings is still the gold standard for eyebrow-raising officiating. In Game 6, the Lakers somehow got 27 free throws in the fourth quarter alone. That's not home court advantage, that's a parade to the line. Phantom fouls hit every Kings big man. Meanwhile, the Lakers got just enough help to force a Game 7. And it wasn't just fan outrage. Former ref Tim Donaghy, who later went to prison, claimed under oath the game was manipulated under league pressure. He said execs wanted the Lakers in the finals for ratings. Was that ever proven? But the numbers sure tell a convenient story. Go back 2 years, and the Blazers had the Lakers beat, up 15 in the fourth quarter of Game 7. Then it all evaporated. Missed shots, no calls, and a dramatic comeback that felt too perfect. It wasn't as blatant as the Kings series, but the vibe was the same. A momentum swing that defied logic and good defense. Why would the league care? Simple. The Lakers were the ticket. Huge market, global stars, and record-breaking TV deals. Sacramento and Portland just didn't offer that kind of market power. A Lakers dynasty was good business. And the refs? Well, they didn't exactly ruin that plan. Adam Silver never touches this topic, because dragging it back into the spotlight means explaining how credibility can get sacrificed for narrative. No tapes, no confessions, but the script felt rehearsed. And the Kings and Blazers, they were just background characters in someone else's championship montage. Tampering theater. The NBA says it's cracking down on tampering, but let's not kid ourselves. It's part of the show. Stars recruit each other all the time. LeBron has done it on Instagram, in interviews, even during All-Star Weekend. Draymond Green, he once called Kevin Durant right after the finals to pitch him on a move. The lines are blurry and everyone knows it. Executives are supposed to stay quiet, but that hasn't stopped them either. Magic Johnson got fined $500,000 for praising Giannis. The Lakers lost picks over Paul George. The Sixers got dinged in 2022 for maneuvering a friendly James Harden contract that conveniently created room for other signings. The Bucks? They lost Bogdanovich before he ever played a game because they leaked a deal too early. But none of these punishments actually change behavior. Why? Because the benefits outweigh the penalties. Losing a second-round pick or paying a fine is nothing when you land a franchise player. These teams treat it like a fee, not a deterrent. And the NBA, they're not really rushing to stop it. Star movement drives headlines, ticket sales, and TV ratings. Super teams aren't a problem. They're a business model. So while Silver talks about integrity and balance, the league turns a blind eye as long as the drama pays off. Tampering is baked into the culture now. Everyone's doing it, just with enough layers between them and the league office to avoid real heat. The rules exist, sure, but they're more suggestion than sword. And Adam Silver, he's not about to shut off the soap opera. Not when it's this profitable. Undocumented hazing. The NBA likes to sell the image of unity, brotherhood, and mentorship. But behind closed doors, that welcome to the league moment can look more like a power trip. Sure, there's the usual rookie stuff, carrying bags, buying dinner, maybe singing in front of the team. But plenty of stories go way beyond that. Gilbert Arenas has talked about ice baths with no clothes, forced gambling, and locker room pranks that would raise red flags in any other workplace. Matt Barnes has openly said hazing in the 2000s got out of control. He described it as physical, humiliating, and often protected by the team's silence. Deshaun Stevenson once bragged about locking rookies in bathroom stalls. J.J. Redick said on his podcast that some of the stuff he saw early on would never fly today. And that's from a guy who played over a decade in the league. The reason these stories rarely hit the surface? Teams don't want headline. No one wants to deal with lawsuits, public backlash, or player suspensions. So it's all handled internally, if at all. There's no formal anti-hazing structure in the NBA, no reporting hotline, no transparency. The NFL and NCAA at least pretend to monitor this stuff. The NBA, it's just rookie duties. Young players don't speak up. They're afraid of retaliation or being labeled soft. And veterans, they call it tradition. But when team bonding involves forced humiliation or physical threats, it's not a rite of passage. It's unchecked control. Adam Silver won't talk about it because the league would rather pretend this is just a thing of the past. But the silence doesn't mean it's gone. It just means they've gotten better at hiding it. Cap loophole exploitation. The NBA has a salary cap, but if you're a big market team with deep pockets and creative accountants, it might as well be written in pencil. Teams like the Warriors, Lakers, and Heat have built stacked rosters by dancing through every legal gray area the collective bargaining agreement allows. Sign and trades? That's not just a trade. It's a way to snag stars without eating up raw cap space. Golden State did it with D'Angelo Russell, only to flip him for Andrew Wiggins later. Clean on paper, sneaky in practice. Then there's the mid-level exception. Over the cap? Doesn't matter. Teams still sign solid rotation players using this tool every year. The Lakers love it. The Heat built a bench with it. It's a free pass if you're smart enough to wield it. Buyouts might be the most obvious scheme. Veterans take their money from one team, then sign with contenders for next to nothing. Drummond, Blake, Dragic. They all landed on playoff squads after cashing out somewhere else. No cap issue, no penalties, just convenience. And the real cheat code? Bird rights. Golden State used them to re-sign their entire core, ignoring the cap because the rules said they could. The result? Record-setting payrolls and still no hard stop. Small market teams can't keep up. They can't lure veterans at a discount, and they won't pay the tax just to stay relevant. Meanwhile, big market clubs exploit delayed extensions, backloaded deals, and even wink-wink agreements that somehow always benefit the star and the brand. Adam Silver won't admit this strategy gap exists because the loopholes are part of the system itself. The CBA gives teams options, but only the rich ones know how to weaponize them. Secret surveillance. It sounds paranoid until enough players start saying the same thing. Kenyon Martin once said he felt like someone was always watching during road trips. Hallways, hotel rooms, flights. He didn't feel alone. Gilbert Arenas went further, claiming teams used snitches and planted guys in the traveling party to report back on nightlife, behavior, and whatever else didn't fit the professional image. Delonte West said security would just pop up during his personal time. He wasn't the only one. Multiple unnamed players told outlets like The Athletic and Bleacher Report that during rookie orientation, veterans warned them, assume your hotel room is bugged. Not metaphorically, literally. Why would teams do this? Because they're not just protecting players, they're protecting investments. If a franchise has over $100 million tied to a star, they want to know if he's up until 4 a.m. at a casino or throwing house parties after back-to-backs. It's about leverage too. Behavior patterns can factor into contracts, trades, or disciplinary conversations. Military-style franchises like Pat Riley's Miami or the early 2000s Spurs were known for strict off-court discipline. Stories from those environments suggest that surveillance wasn't just plausible, it was part of the system. Of course, no team ever admits it. If surveillance happened, it came through private security firms or hotel partnerships. And unless there's an actual law being broken, like secret audio recording, it's a gray area. The NBA has no public policy against a team monitoring its own players. Adam Silver's not about to drag this topic into the light, because acknowledging it would raise uncomfortable questions about privacy, trust, and how far teams will go to control their product. In this league, silence is standard protocol. Media smears. When an NBA team wants to move a player, the trade call isn't the first step, the leak is. Front offices have quietly mastered the art of leaking just enough dirt to sour the market, shift fan perception, and justify whatever move they're about to make. Andre Blatch said the Wizards painted him as a locker room problem right before using the amnesty clause. Coincidence? Not likely. The Sixers dragged Okafor through the mud, publicly questioning his conditioning and professionalism while letting trade talks stall for months. By the time they moved him, his value was toast. And then there's Markelle Fultz. The mystery injuries, the whispers about his shot being unfixable, the suggestions, it was all mental. Those didn't just show up out of nowhere. They came from somewhere inside. The Lakers pulled a similar move with D'Angelo Russell. After the Nick Young recording scandal, immaturity rumors started flying. Not long after, he was out the door. It's not subtle, but it's effective. If you lower a player's value, you can make your front office look like it's making a smart, cost-effective deal, even if the real issue was mismanagement. Teams don't admit to this. They just let sources do the talking. Sometimes it's a reporter with access. Sometimes it's an anonymous quote that just so happens to reflect exactly what the front office needs the public to believe. Adam Silver's not confronting it because it's too baked into the business. It's clean, deniable sabotage. And for executives trying to shift blame, it's the perfect tool, because once a player's reputation is dented, the narrative almost always sticks. Activism, watch list. The NBA won't admit it, but too many stories line up the same way. Speak out, get iced out. Mohammed Abdul-Rauf refused to stand for the anthem in the mid-90s and was suspended. Still productive on the court, but somehow couldn't find a roster spot after that. Craig Hodges showed up to the White House in a dashiki and handed the president a letter criticizing U.S. policy. He never played another NBA minute, not a coincidence. Then there's Enes Kanter Freedom. He went after China, Nike, and even the NBA itself. Within a year, his career was over. He says he's blacklisted. And when you look at the league's deep ties to Chinese markets, it's hard not to believe him. Behind the curtain, the league has full-blown media monitoring teams. They don't just watch games. They track tweets, headlines, interviews, and social buzz. Insiders say there's an unofficial system that flags players seen as PR risks. No paper trail, just internal memos and quiet warnings. If someone becomes too loud, too political, or too hard to brand, they get nudged out, gently, silently, and professionally. National broadcasts, journalists have said producers sometimes avoid giving airtime to players known for volatile views, not because of performance, but because the league would rather avoid the segment entirely. PR teams allegedly alert sponsors and franchises about who might be a branding concern. Adam Silver's not putting this in writing, obviously, but the pattern is too consistent, the whispers too loud, and the consequences too sharp. The league controls its image tightly, and if you fall outside that image, the silence isn't just cold, it's calculated. LeVar saved his sons. LeVar Ball didn't hesitate when he thought danger was close. While out with Lonzo, LiAngelo, and LaMelo, he suddenly heard a loud sound he believed was shots. Instinct kicked in. He threw his arms around them and hustled them toward safety. It happened fast, just second, but that kind of reaction, it speaks volumes. He later shared the story in a documentary clip, and you can see it in his face. He meant every word. The footage doesn't show the exact place or date, and there's no mention of a police report or confirmation of actual gunfire. But none of that really takes away from the moment. LeVar acted on what he thought was a real threat, and that's the part that matters. In the clip, you can tell this wasn't some dramatic retelling for attention. It was just a dad doing what dads are supposed to do, protect their kids no matter what. The whole thing's pretty raw, and even though there wasn't an investigation, the way he moved, the way he pulled them close, that's real. No one got hurt, no chaos broke out. But for those few seconds, LeVar believed everything was on the line, and he wasn't gonna freeze. He moved, quickly, deliberately, like a shield. This moment's been making the rounds, and even though it's been a while, it still sticks. Because when it comes to family, sometimes there's no time to think. You just act. That's exactly what LeVar did. Jordan Bell's stalker nightmare. Jordan Bell's rookie season with Golden State wasn't just about adjusting to the NBA. It turned into something way more personal and disturbing. After posting a photo of himself and his dog online for a promotion, someone managed to figure out his location. That innocent post led a stalker straight to his front door in Oakland. The guy wasn't subtle either. Jordan said he saw the man outside his apartment almost every day for about a week. Glasses, backpack, same creepy vibe each time. It wasn't just him being targeted either. His girlfriend got followed during her evening dog walks. She told Jordan the guy gave her a horrible feeling, just total stranger danger energy, the kind that makes your stomach twist. They took it seriously. They broke their lease and moved out, hoping a quieter area would give them some peace. But after Jordan posted another shot online, this time just a simple neighborhood view, the stalker showed up again. That post had to be taken down immediately, and from then on, Jordan kept things low-key on social media. Even though there was no reported arrest or legal action, the damage was done. They'd been forced to pack up their lives and relocate because someone took things way too far. It's wild how a single photo could unravel someone's sense of safety like that. For a rookie just trying to focus on basketball, Bell had to deal with real fear right outside his front door. He was trying to build a career and instead had to worry about who might be lurking around the corner every time he left his apartment. Aaron Baines's freak injury. During the Tokyo Olympics, Aaron Baines suffered one of the scariest and most bizarre injuries in recent basketball memory. He wasn't hurt during a play. It happened off the court. In the middle of a timeout during a pool play game, Baines headed to the locker room. While using the bathroom, he slipped and crashed into a metal hook on the wall. The fall wasn't just painful, it was catastrophic. He was found on the ground, unable to move, totally disoriented. That hook gashed his arm, but the bigger problem, he'd injured his neck and was bleeding internally near his spine. Things escalated fast. He lost feeling in his arms and legs and had to be rushed to a hospital in Tokyo. The worst part, he was stuck there, alone, thanks to the strict COVID protocols. No family, no teammates, just isolation Doctors weren't sure if he'd ever walk again. The guy went from playing at the highest level to lying in a hospital bed, wondering if life as he knew it was over. But Baines didn't give up. He spent months in rehab, grinding through every step, learning to walk, jog, and eventually shoot again. By July of 2022, he signed with the Brisbane Bullets to reignite his career. And NBA comebacks, still uncertain, but just getting back to the floor is incredible, considering where he started. The whole story flew under the radar, but it shouldn't have. This wasn't just a setback, it was a full-on survival story. Baines didn't just battle back from an injury, he fought to take his life back, one step at a time. Bill Russell's strangest rumor. There's a story floating around that Bill Russell got stabbed by an adult worker named Iodine during the playoffs. And no, that's not a typo. That's actually the name attached to the tale. According to some posts and obscure write-ups, Russell was allegedly in some kind of off-court relationship, and at some point, she stabbed him to the bone with a pair of scissors. That's the story. The incident supposedly happened around the early 70s, maybe during a playoff stretch, but the whole thing's a total mystery when it comes to facts. No credible journalist wrote about it, nothing in newspapers from that time, nothing in his own memoir, Second Wind. You'd think something like being stabbed in the arm with scissors during the postseason would at least get a mention somewhere official, but nope, total silence. This whole thing survives only through anecdotes passed around online. The name Iodine gets dropped. Someone mentions a cut deep enough to expose bone, and that's the extent of the documentation. No police reports, no hospital records, not even a teammate memory to back it up. One social media user quoted the line, "Another, whom he calls Iodine, stabbed him to the bone." That's about as close as it gets to a source. And a few blogs and pages picked that up and ran with it, adding their own flair along the way. But again, zero verification. So yeah, it's wild. But unless someone digs up a buried interview or private letter, this one's stuck in rumor territory. It's talked about a lot, but right now, it's nothing more than one of basketball's weirder urban legends. Gary Suter's Dark Spiral. Gary Suter's time in basketball was short, weird, and unforgettable. He was 7 feet tall and somehow still managed to be the class clown of every room he entered. While bouncing around the ABA, in a quick stop with the Cavaliers, he built a strange little legend. Teammates couldn't predict him. One day he's prank calling coaches, the next he's stuffing peanut butter and jelly sandwiches in other players' sneakers. Someone said he once moonwalked into a team meeting like it was normal. And the powdered donut story? He allegedly downed a full box before warm-ups, puked all over the floor, then still suited up to play. But all that comedy stopped after the game ended. Suter didn't land softly when basketball was over. His life off the court took a darker turn. He struggled with his mental health, got wrapped up in gambling, and drifted towards small-time crime. By 1982, the Goofball Center, who once cracked up locker rooms, was found murdered in a New Mexico motel. The story gets worse. Reports say he owed around $200 to a local hustler with a dangerous reputation. That man lured him into a fake meeting, then attacked him. Suter died after being beaten with a hammer, over gambling debt, over pocket change. For those who remembered him, the news was brutal. A guy who once filled rooms with noise and pranks was suddenly gone. And for the saddest reason, Gary Suter went from cult icon to cautionary tale. His story shows just how fast the game can end and how quickly the laughs can turn into silence. Charles Barkley's spitting incident. In March of 1991, things got out of control during a Sixers and Nets game. Barkley was being heckled, and it wasn't just trash talk, it was full of racial slurs. Frustrated and fed up, Barkley turned and spit in the heckler's direction. But the spit didn't hit the guy. It hit an 8-year-old girl sitting courtside. That moment instantly became one of the most talked about incidents of his career. The NBA didn't let it slide. He got suspended for 1 game and fined $10,000. But beyond the punishment, it stuck with him on a personal level. Barkley didn't duck the fallout. He publicly apologized to the girl's family and went further than just words. He stayed in touch, offered them tickets, and built a real friendship with them. Later interviews showed how much the moment shook him. Barkley admitted the whole thing forced him to take a hard look at how he let anger control him. He said, "You do stupid things, I just have to live with a stupid mistake." That wasn't just a quote, it was a turning point. He started focusing on how to channel emotion without letting it boil over into something destructive. This wasn't some random controversy that faded out. It stayed with him, not because people wouldn't let it go, but because he wouldn't let himself forget it. The man who once let rage dictate his reactions learned to own it, fix it, and grow from it. And yeah, the story gets twisted sometimes, but here's what's real. Barkley made a mistake, took the hit, and tried to be better after it. NBA Jam's haunted glitch. After Drazen Petrovic died in a car crash in June of 1993, something strange started happening in arcades. The original NBA Jam game, released just before his death, began doing something no one expected. without anyone touching the controls. Machines started blurting out Petrovich during demo mode. Over and over, no context, no gameplay, just the name. Developers noticed it. Mark Turmo, one of the original creators, recalled how it would happen while they were working on other games. One time, during a Mortal Kombat session, he said the machine started yelling Petrovich, and everyone freaked out. This wasn't part of the design. The weird part, that didn't happen before Petrovich's death. Technically, it looks like a glitch. The sound file for his name would just loop during attack mode, triggered by something unknown, but it never happened for any other player. And that's where the legend grew. Fans started whispering about a haunted cabinet. TikToks, Reddit posts, and even YouTube horror channels jumped on the mystery, with people convinced Petrovich's spirit lingered in the game. Later, arcade versions fixed the issue. Updated software stopped the glitch, and there's no record of it continuing in consoles or re-releases. But the timing? Still eerie. It's been confirmed by the devs, but never explained. Only Petrovich's name triggered that loop. Not Jordan, not Ewing, just Petrovich. People love to say it was his ghost, but even if it was just bad code, it's still one of the strangest stories tied to a video game, and the memory of a player who left way too soon. No other glitch has carried this much mystery, and no one's forgotten the sound of that name echoing out of nowhere. Jalen Rose stole Patrick Ewing's TV. During a Pacers and Knicks matchup in March of 1999, things got a little physical between Jalen Rose and Patrick Ewing. Ewing either tripped him or yanked him down mid-game, depends on who you ask, but Rose decided to get creative with the payback. Later that day, at the airport, Rose spotted something that caught his attention, a bulky, top-of-the-line television with a VCR built in. It had Patrick Ewing's name right on the side. Rose didn't hesitate. He grabbed it, just walked off with it, like it was his luggage. No cloak and dagger stuff, just a bold, hilarious swipe. Rose tells the story like it's a locker room fable. He didn't try to hide it. In fact, he laughs while calling it state of the art, like he just pulled off the greatest tech heist of the 90s. According to him, it wasn't about disrespect. It was just a harmless, petty prank to even the score. No arrests, no hard feelings, just a great piece of NBA travel day folklore. That one silly prank became a staple in Rose's Storytime videos, and players still bring it up like it happened last week. It's a perfect example of the behind-the-scenes stuff fans rarely see, where towering athletes with fierce rivalries still act like college roommates trying to one-up each other. Decades later, the image of Jalen Rose casually strolling off with the 7-footer's TV still lives on as one of the NBA's funniest off-court moments, all because of a hard foul and a little too much time in the terminal. Nikola Pekovic, criminal ties. In April of 2025, Montenegrin police launched a series of coordinated raids across northern Montenegro. They seized drugs, weapons, and an armored BMW X5 registered to none other than Nikola Pekovic. Authorities didn't just note the vehicle, they identified him as a high-ranking member of the Sharic crime group, one of the Balkans' most notorious drug trafficking networks. That wasn't the first time Pekovic's name showed up in reports like this. Back in 2017, Serbian police arrested 2 men in a car also registered to him, loaded with weapons and suspected narcotics. At the time, he denied any wrongdoing, but did admit he had personal and business ties to the Sharic family. He's even the godfather of one of Darko Šaric's sons. No formal charges have been filed against Pekovic so far, but the connection is more than rumor. Eurohoops, Diario AS, and multiple local outlets have verified that police seized his property and continue to link him directly to the group's operation. Social media picked up on the detail, and threads have piled up, reinforcing the perception that Pekovic isn't just a retired basketball player. He might be tangled deep in organized crime. Despite the weight of the evidence, there's still no conviction, no public statement from Pekovic, and no official charges. But the case keeps building. From luxury vehicles to investment links, it's not just gossip. It's an open file with serious implications. Whether this ends in court or quietly disappears, one thing's clear. The former NBA big man's post-basketball path looks a lot more dangerous than anything he ever faced in the paint. Jason Williams' racist outburst. On February 28, 2001, during a Kings and Warriors game, Sacramento guard Jason Williams crossed a serious line. While sitting on the bench, he got into it with fans sitting courtside. But it wasn't just trash talk. This time, it was racial and violent. Michael Cheng, an Asian American season ticket holder, filed a complaint saying Williams called him a slant-eyed slur and shouted that he'd shoot all the Asian mother. You can guess the rest. Williams even mimed firing a machine gun in reference to the Vietnam War and Pearl Harbor. According to Cheng's letter to the league, It wasn't an isolated insult. It was a string of threats and hateful remarks aimed at him and others sitting nearby. Ching also reported that Williams asked if he was gay and used another homophobic slur in the middle of it all. It wasn't private. It happened right there on the sideline with other fans watching. The NBA fined Williams $15,000. That was it. No suspension, no further punishment. Nike pulled out of a planned ad campaign though, and the backlash hit hard in the Asian American community. Williams did issue a written apology, saying he regretted offending anyone, but for many, it didn't feel like enough. This wasn't a rumor or an exaggerated headline. It was real, documented by the league, confirmed by witnesses, and reported across national outlets. It's one of the most blatant, on-record examples of a player targeting fans with racist and violent language, and it left a mark, not just on his reputation, but on the league's response to racism in the stands. Mark Cuban and the DeAndre Jordan chase. In July of 2015, free agency took a wild turn. DeAndre Jordan had verbally committed to join the Mavericks, and Dallas fans were already imagining him in their starting five. Then suddenly, he flipped. Jordan changed his mind and decided to return to the Clippers. That decision sparked one of the most chaotic nights in NBA offseason history. ESPN's Chris Broussard tweeted that Mark Cuban was driving around downtown Houston begging for DeAndre's address. Broussard claimed Cuban was texting Jordan's family, trying to get to him face to face. That version exploded online. Fans were picturing Cuban lost in Houston, desperate, headlights cutting through the night as he hunted for Jordan. Cuban didn't let it slide. He flat out denied it, calling the story ridiculous. He said he'd flown into Houston, checked into a hotel near Jordan's home, and told his driver to take him to the gated community where Jordan lived. He knocked, no answer. He texted Jordan, who replied that he was on a date. Cuban said he respected the message and went back to his hotel. That's it. No driving in circles, no pleading with family, just a failed visit. Cuban even offered $100,000 to charity if Broussard could show proof he begged for the address. Broussard later apologized, admitting he didn't confirm details before tweeting. Cuban called him an idiot, and the back and forth became almost as entertaining as the free agency flip itself. In the end, the only thing verified is that Cuban flew to Houston, knocked on a door, and got ghosted. Everything else? Just noise. But it made for one of the wildest modern NBA storylines, one where social media nearly rewrote the truth in real time. Larry Bird's nine-fingered greatness. Right before his rookie season, in 1979, Larry Bird shattered his right index finger playing softball with his brother back in Indiana. Not a sprain, not a jam. A full-on crushing. The knuckle was ruined, and he lost most of the mobility in that finger on his shooting hand. Most guys would have gotten surgery or rehabbed it properly. Bird didn't. He taped it up, adjusted his form, and kept it quiet. That one injury changed his shot forever. He couldn't flick the ball like he used to, so he shifted to relying on timing, arc, and feel. Mechanics thrown out the window. He made it work anyway. That's the craziest part. Nobody even knew how bad it was while he was torching the league. His passes, just as wild. Bird's famous bullet passes and trick bounces were all delivered with a dominant hand that didn't even fully function. That busted finger didn't stop him from winning 3 Most Valuable Player awards or 3 championships. It didn't stop him from becoming one of the greatest forwards of all time. If anything, it somehow made him even more dangerous. Bird once admitted he had to change his shot permanently. He couldn't shoot like everyone else, so he shot like Larry Bird and still dominated. Teammates said if his hand had been fully healthy, his shot would have been untouchable. As it stands, it was already terrifying. So yeah, he did all of that with 9 working fingers. No excuses, no complaints, just tape, toughness, and pure basketball genius. That's the kind of quiet legend people forget, but it changes how you look at every highlight he ever made. The ABA's Foul Game. On October 26, 1972, the Virginia Squires faced the Denver Rockets in what became the most bizarre game in ABA history. Denver's coach, Alex Hannum, decided to run an experiment. He told his players to intentionally foul any Squires player who tried to shoot in the fourth quarter. This wasn't desperation, it was deliberate. Hannum wanted to test how extreme a team could play without ruining their chances. The results? A statistical disaster. Denver racked up 56 fouls in the second half alone. 7 players fouled out. They only dressed 10, so by the final minutes, only 3 were eligible to play. Referees let 2 disqualified players stay on the court, but every foul after that resulted in a technical. Virginia shot 56 free throws in just the fourth quarter, making 53. They only made 4 field goals, that entire quarter. The rest of their 53 points came from the line, an ABA record for a single quarter. Altogether, they attempted 92 free throws in the game and made 72. The combined team foul total hit 86. The score, Squires 155, Rockets 111, but none of it counted. On November 7th, the ABA commissioner ruled it a forfeit in favor of Virginia and erased all the stats. Julius Erving's 22 points disappeared from the books. So did the records. This remains the only regular season forfeit in ABA history. A full game played, completely erased, all because a coach wanted to push the limits of strategy and found the league's breaking point instead. Tony Allen's freak knee injury. On January 10th, 2007, Tony Allen was having a breakout season with the Boston Celtics. He was averaging close to 12 points per game, finally showing the offensive spark fans had been waiting for. But that all changed in a single, bizarre moment against the Indiana Pacers. Midway through the game, Allen was fouled by Steven Jackson while driving to the rim. The whistle blew. Play was dead, but Allen kept going. He elevated for a dunk after the foul. No pressure, no defender, just a routine slam for show. Except when he landed, his left leg gave out. The result? A devastating triple injury, torn ACL, torn MCL, and damage to both menisci and his left knee. It wasn't a game winner. It wasn't during the action. It was a dead ball dunk, completely avoidable and totally career altering. Allen collapsed instantly. Celtics coach Doc Rivers confirmed the worst. Season over. That one post-whistle decision changed the trajectory of his entire career. From that point forward, Allen was never again the offensive weapon he had been that season. But that's where the next chapter began. After months of grueling rehab, he reinvented himself, and not as a scorer, but as one of the most respected defenders in the league. He earned the nickname Grindfather and became the heart of the Memphis Grizzlies' gritty identity. To this day, people still misremember the injury as a hand or finger issue. But the truth is, it was a full left knee blowout, caused by a dunk attempt that didn't need to happen. It's one of the strangest what-ifs in Celtics history, and one of the toughest bounce-backs in league memory. Austin Rivers challenged Kevin Garnett. Back when Austin Rivers was just school junior, he somehow found himself at a Boston Celtics practice and made a decision that most teenagers would have only joked about. He called out Kevin Garnett to play one-on-one, and not as a gimmick. He actually meant it. Before that, Rivers had already scored a quick 5-point win against Kendrick Perkins. Yes, Perkins. So his confidence was running high. He turned to Garnett, challenged him, and got the first possession. And unbelievably, Rivers scored. First play, drove right at KG, and finished. Garnett wasn't even fully laced up yet, but that was the end of the fun part. After that first bucket, Garnett calmly bent down, tied his shoes, and decided enough was enough. What followed was a 5-1 run by Garnett. He locked in and didn't let Rivers score again. The final score was 5-1. Game over. Rivers scored first, then got the full KG experience. It wasn't just a cool story, it was a moment that showed Rivers' confidence and Garnett's unshakable dominance. No handouts, no mercy, just laced up sneakers and a reminder that even high school prodigies still had to earn it the hard way. Larry Johnson's rebellious slaves remark. During the 1999 NBA Finals, between the Knicks and the Spurs, Larry Johnson made headlines off the court when he described his team by saying, "We've got a lot of rebellious slaves on this team." It was a jarring statement, delivered in the middle of the league's biggest stage, and it didn't go unnoticed. The backlash was instant. Broadcaster Bill Walton called the comment a disgrace on air and took direct aim at Johnson's performance and character. The criticism sparked a larger conversation, and Johnson didn't back down. He explained his comments in more depth afterward. According to Johnson, the remark wasn't meant to insult anyone. It was about the systemic conditions he believed he and others came from. He talked about being the only one from his neighborhood to make it out. He said, "No one man can rise above the mass condition of his people." He framed the statement as part of a bigger frustration with race, identity, and how black players were perceived. Johnson also responded directly to Walton's criticism. He said, "Tell him to trace his history, see how many slaves his ancestors had." He doubled down by saying fellow players like Avery Johnson came from the same plantation, further extending the metaphor. The league didn't issue any formal discipline, but the moment became one of the most controversial quotes in finals history. Some saw Johnson's words as powerful commentary on race and control in pro sports. Others saw it as a poor metaphor delivered in the wrong setting. Whatever your view, the incident was real, widely reported, and it forced a conversation about who gets to speak on power and identity, especially under the bright lights of the finals. Trailblazers' costly contact. In May of 1984, the Portland Trailblazers were hit with what was then the biggest fine in NBA history, $250,000. The reason? They violated a league bylaw that prohibited teams from contacting college players who still had eligibility remaining. Portland officials had reportedly reached out to two major names, Patrick Ewing and Akeem Olajuwon. Both were juniors at the time and had not yet declared for the NBA draft. League rules, passed in 1981, clearly stated that no team could contact underclassmen more than 45 days before the draft unless those players had officially declared. Portland argued that their conversations were general and not part of any recruiting or negotiation. Commissioner David Stern disagreed. A hearing was held on May 17th. The coin flip to determine who would get the number one pick between Portland and Houston was delayed while the investigation played out. Houston, meanwhile, was cleared because they reportedly backed out of talks once they realized the players weren't draft eligible. When the ruling came down on May 21st, Stern imposed the record fine but did not penalize the Blazers with a lost draft pick. Portland accepted the punishment but maintained they acted in good faith. Still, the message was clear: even indirect contact with college underclassmen could bring serious consequences. The fine set a precedent for how the NBA would enforce pre-draft conduct moving forward. It wasn't just about tampering, it was about respecting the process. Portland learned that lesson the expensive way, and every team after took notes. The rulebook wasn't just a guideline, Stern made it a boundary. Tim Duncan's Olympic swimming dream. Before he became one of the greatest power forwards in NBA history, Tim Duncan had a completely different dream. He wanted to be an Olympic swimmer. Growing up in St. Croix, in the U.S. Virgin Islands, Duncan trained daily, swimming up to 8,000 meters a day. His sister, Tricia, had already competed in the 1988 Olympics, and Tim had his sights set on making the 1992 team. He specialized in freestyle, 50, 100, and 400-meter events, and was considered a serious prospect. But in September of 1989, Hurricane Hugo tore through St. Croix. The storm destroyed the island's only Olympic-sized pool. That pool wasn't just a training site, it was the only facility that allowed structured practice for swimmers like Duncan. Left with no alternatives, Duncan tried training in the ocean, but there was one major problem. He had a fear of sharks. That fear was enough to push him away from the water entirely. That's when basketball entered the picture. He started playing around age 14. It wasn't love at first shot, but with his size, athleticism, and the discipline built from years of swimming, Duncan grew into a top-tier high school player. He went on to star at Wake Forest, then became the number one pick in the 1997 NBA draft, and the rest, 5 championships, 2 MVPs, 15 All-Star selections, and a legacy defined by fundamentals, consistency, and quiet dominance, all built on a path that began in the water. His Olympic dream never happened, but it shaped the legend he eventually became. Oliver Miller's pistol whipping case. In April of 2011, former NBA center Oliver Miller was arrested in Maryland after reportedly striking a man with a handgun during a family cookout. The incident happened in Arnold, just outside Annapolis. Miller, who was 41 at the time, hit a 32-year-old man, identified as his girlfriend's brother, in the face and head. The victim needed 11 staples to close the wounds. Police charged Miller with multiple offenses: first and second-degree assault, reckless endangerment, handgun possession, using a handgun in a violent crime, and disorderly conduct. It was one of the most serious legal incidents involving a former player in years. In November that same year, Miller pleaded guilty to 2 charges: first-degree assault and carrying a handgun. At sentencing, the judge gave him 5 years for the assault charge, but suspended 4, meaning Miller served 1 year. On the handgun charge, he got 3 years, with all but 30 days suspended. He also received 5 years of probation and was recommended for work release. The charges stemmed from an argument that escalated, and the court determined Miller used the weapon during the altercation, not just displayed it. The sentencing judge, Paul Hackner, emphasized the seriousness of the offense, but acknowledged Miller's cooperation during the legal process. The case stands out as a cautionary post-career chapter in Miller's life. Once an NBA All-Rookie team member and a promising big man, his post-basketball years took a sharp turn into legal trouble. His 1 year behind bars marked the most serious consequence for a player once seen as full of potential, and serves as a reminder that off-court decisions can rewrite the legacy of anyone, no matter how high they once climbed. Joakim Noah's shoulder test. In 2016, not long after Joakim Noah signed with the New York Knicks, team president Phil Jackson shared a strange encounter that perfectly captured Noah's energy and Jackson's reluctance to get involved in whatever that was. The two reportedly ran into each other randomly on a New York City street. At the time, Noah was coming off surgery for a dislocated left shoulder, and questions about his health were circling. According to Jackson, Noah was eager to prove he was ready to go, and not just with words. Noah supposedly told Jackson to test the shoulder strength himself by doing a pull-up on his arm. That's not a metaphor. Noah literally invited the team president to grab onto his outstretched arm and try to lift himself, as if the future of his Knicks tenure hinged on impromptu sidewalk gymnastics. Jackson declined. He told reporters later that he wasn't about to perform a pull-up off a freshly repaired shoulder. Still, he took the gesture as a bold vote of confidence from Noah, proof that he was physically ready, or at the very least, determined to show it. The moment never made it into highlight reels or press conferences, but it became one of those odd, quotable side stories that stuck. A mix of classic Noah, fiery, dramatic, a little offbeat, and classic Phil, calm, amused, and not even a little tempted to test the rotator cuff of his newest big man in the middle of Manhattan. It didn't guarantee health or performance, but it gave the Knicks one of their weirdest injury check-ins ever. Jerome James showed up out of shape. In 2005, the New York Knicks signed Jerome James to a 5-year, $30 million contract after his strong playoff run with Seattle. What they got instead was one of the most infamous examples of post-contract decline in recent memory. When James arrived at training camp, he was noticeably out of shape, reportedly weighing over 300 pounds. He didn't ease into form. He pulled his hamstring multiple times and never got back into game-ready condition. Frank Hughes wrote at the time that James came into camp fat and happy, hinting that the payday had erased any urgency to perform. It didn't take long for the Knicks to start limiting his media access. He wasn't on the court much, and they clearly didn't want him answering questions about why. By January 2nd, 2006, he was suspended outright for not being prepared to practice. Not for an outburst, not for conduct, just for being too out of shape to function in an NBA workout. That season, he averaged 3.1 points and 2.1 rebounds in 9 minutes per game. That's what the Knicks got for $30 million. No progression, no impact, and no serious bounce-back attempt. Just a massive contract and a player who seemed stuck in cruise control. The Jerome James deal became a cautionary tale, not just for overpaying off a playoff sample size, but for failing to assess long-term fitness and commitment. He played a role in one of the Knicks' worst stretches, and his conditioning issues became the symbol of an era where desperation spending met brutal reality. Michael Jordan punched Will Perdue. During a heated Bulls practice, Will Perdue set a screen that dropped Jordan to the floor. Jordan didn't take it lightly. He gave a warning, told Perdue not to do it again. But on the next play, it happened again. Jordan got up and punched him right there on the court. Coaches jumped in to break it up, but the damage was done. Perdue ended up with a black eye and a wild story. The moment didn't stay behind closed doors. It first came out in The Jordan Rules, a book that already painted Jordan as a ruthless, win-at-all-costs type. Years later, Perdue confirmed the story himself. He talked about it in interviews and said these kinds of fights weren't unusual during practice. This wasn't just a one-time blow-up. The Bulls' practices were like a battleground, and Jordan was often the loudest and most aggressive guy out there. There were other incidents too. Jordan went at Steve Kerr. He clashed with Scotty Burrell. He argued with Horace Grant. So yeah, Perdue's story fits a pattern. Jordan's leadership style was brutal. Perdue said things like this happened all the time because of how competitive the environment was. But this punch stood out because it showed just how intense Jordan could get. Not just yelling, not just trash talk, actual punches. And Perdue didn't deny any of it. He owned the story and admitted the punch happened. It wasn't just a locker room myth or some rumor. It added to Jordan's legend, but not in a flattering way. This was about control, power, and setting the tone. Championship culture had a price, and sometimes that price was a black eye. Gold Club scandal. The Gold Club scandal rocked the NBA back in 2001 when federal investigators dropped a massive case on Steve Kaplan and 16 others. This wasn't just a sleazy nightclub story. It was a federal racketeering case that involved credit card fraud, prostitution, and ties to the Gambino crime family. The club allegedly operated like a secret playground for athletes and celebrities, offering physical acts on the house to reel in the big names. The key witness? Thomas Siciliano. He was Kaplan's right-hand guy and spilled everything. He said Kaplan ordered dancers to give physical acts to players like Patrick Ewing, John Starks, and Jerry Stackhouse. And Ewing, he actually testified in court. He said he visited the Gold Club around 10 to 12 times, and 2 of those visits ended with physical acts in a private room, completely free. One of those times, Kaplan was right there in the room. Ewing didn't think it was prostitution because he never paid. The club just took care of it. That's exactly what the feds were trying to prove. Kaplan was using the physical acts as a comp to keep celebrities coming back, and it worked. Siciliano also told the court about the physical acts shows Kaplan arranged for Knicks rookies at training camp in South Carolina. Rookies like Walter McCarty and Dontai Jones got private hotel room shows with Gold Club dancers. It all led to Kaplan taking a plea deal. He admitted to racketeering and other charges, paid a $5 million fine, and served 16 months. The club was shut down for good. The trial had receipts, testimony, and names. So yeah, people believe it happened. It wasn't just smoke. It was a 5-alarm fire with a paper trail. Tree bites, man. Back in April of 1983, Boston Garden turned into a full-blown madhouse during Game 3 of the Celtics and Hawks playoff series. With everything on the line, Hawks center Tree Rollins elbowed Danny Ainge after Ainge called him a sissy. That insult set off a chain reaction. Ainge lunged, tackled the 7-footer, and all chaos broke loose. Benches cleared, players piled on, and somewhere in the madness, Rollins bit Ainge's middle finger. Not just a nibble, he tore the tendon. Ainge had to get stitches and a tetanus shot. Even wilder, Ainge got ejected. Rollins didn't. The Boston Herald nailed it the next morning with one legendary headline, Tree Bites Man. That headline alone locked this into NBA folklore. Rollins didn't exactly deny it either. He later said somebody's finger ended up in his eye and he just chomped down. Whether it was instinct or revenge, the bite became the lasting image of that playoff series. The NBA eventually hit Rollins with a 5-game suspension and a $5,000 fine, but that came at the start of the next season, so no punishment during the actual game where the bite happened. This wasn't just a fight, it was a cultural moment. A guy bit another guy's finger during a playoff game. It's one of those stories that doesn't even need exaggeration. The facts do the heavy lifting, and because it was a playoff game, and because both players were so different, a scrappy guard versus a towering center, it added to the shock. The violence, the absurdity, and that perfect headline turned a wild playoff scrap into one of the weirdest, most unforgettable moments in NBA history. By the way, if you guys want to subscribe, I'm going to be posting every day. Thanks. Anyways, B.J. Tyler's Ice Pack disaster. B.J. Tyler was a lightning-fast point guard, drafted 20th overall by Philadelphia in 1994. He showed promise in his rookie year, logging 55 games. Then Toronto grabbed him in the expansion draft, locking him into a multi-year deal worth around $6 million. It should have been the next step up. Instead, it became the end. Right before the 1995 season, Tyler was nursing an ankle issue. The rehab? Ice. Standard stuff. But instead of timing it or watching carefully, he fell asleep with the pack on. That cold sat too long on the skin, and when he woke up, the damage was done. He'd iced straight through the tissue, causing nerve injury so severe it robbed him of his speed. And speed wasn't just part of his game, it was everything. That night ended his career, just like that. He never suited up for Toronto, never stepped on an NBA floor again. At 24, he was done. This wasn't a blown knee or an Achilles tear, it was an off-court accident. So rare, so strange, it became legend. Tyler's downfall wasn't a defender or a dunk gone wrong. It was a frozen mistake. No comeback, no miracle rehab, no return seasons. Just the end. His case shows how even something as simple as icing an injury can spiral into a nightmare if no one's paying attention. Teams preach recovery routines all the time, but Tyler's story became a cautionary tale. His fall wasn't flashy or public. It was quiet, permanent, and completely preventable. The Raptors never got to see what they paid for, and the league lost a talented guard to a $10 ice pack. The Suns' Coke scandal. In April of 1987, the Phoenix Suns found themselves caught in one of the NBA's wildest off-court meltdowns. 3 active players, James Edwards, Jay Humphries, and Grant Gondrezick, were indicted on coke trafficking charges. Prosecutors claimed they weren't just users. They were wrapped up in a network of drug transfers, including Mary Jane, and had ties to local nightlife and even a ticket taker. Former players like Gar Hurd and Mike Bratz were also indicted, but it didn't stop there. Walter Davis, a 6-time All-Star, was named as an illicit user. He avoided charges only by testifying against his teammates. He admitted to relapsing and using drugs with multiple players, including those already under the microscope. The Suns suspended him immediately, and the NBA launched its own investigation. Then things got even sketchier. Wiretaps picked up chatter about the Suns-Bucks game staying under 226 total points. That game ended 115-107. No gambling charges were filed, but the whisper stuck. Gondrezick ended up pleading guilty to witness tampering. He got probation and a fine. Edwards and Humphries avoided prosecution by agreeing to counseling. Nobody went to trial for drug trafficking, but the damage was done. The team's image shattered. The death of Johnny High, a key witness, added another eerie twist. Jerry Colangelo later took control of the franchise, trying to drag it out of the scandal's shadow. The Suns missed the playoffs that year. Their reputation took a hit that never fully healed. Even without convictions, the scandal painted a picture of locker room chaos, betrayal, and a franchise in freefall, all from inside its own huddle. Yi Jianlian's age scandal. When Jianlian was drafted 6th overall in 2007, the NBA thought they were getting a 19-year-old forward with loads of potential. But Chinese reports, scouts, and even his own documents pointed to something else. He was likely born in 1984, not 1987. That would have made him 22 or 23 on draft night. In 2008, a Sports Illustrated China reporter found Yi's middle school registration form from 1997. On it, written by Jianlian himself, was a birth date, October 27, 1984. That was the bombshell. China's sports ministry had already flagged dozens of players for age fraud, and Yi's name was right in the middle of the mess. Media outlets in China demanded answers. One paper even warned the scandal could wreck his career. Yi's response? No comment. Every time he was asked, he dodged. And the doubts weren't just from journalists. Scouts had long said his size and physical maturity didn't match a teenage profile. His development arc looked older, and it wouldn't have been unusual. China's sports system had a long history of age falsification to keep athletes in youth competitions longer. The stakes were high. If John Lian was actually 3 or 4 years older, teams completely misjudged his ceiling. Upside matters in a draft pick, but if that upside was just a mirage created by fake paperwork, then the pick looks a lot different. No legal punishment ever followed, but the documents, media scrutiny, and Yi's silence all fed into a theory that still sticks. He wasn't the NBA's teenage mystery from China. He was a full-grown man hiding in plain sight. Michael Jordan's cigar cutter injury. In January of 1999, while relaxing in the Bahamas during the NBA lockout, Michael Jordan sliced the tendon in his right index finger using what he later called a cheap cigar cutter. The accident wasn't just a nick, it was bad enough to need surgery, twice. Doctors also found nerve damage and signs of previous ligament stress from earlier finger dislocations. That finger, on his shooting hand, never fully healed. Jordan said it limited his grip and made palming the ball a problem. He admitted he could still shoot, but struggled to handle the ball the way he used to. It wasn't just an injury, it changed how he played. Behind the scenes, Bulls management had their own spin. Jerry Krause believed the injury prevented Jordan from returning and milking a contract while not actually playing. Bulls owner Jerry Reinsdorf backed that up, saying the finger would have sidelined him for most of the season anyway. This was just months after Jordan's iconic 6th title and 2nd retirement. Many believed he might have returned if not for the lockout and front office drama. But the cigar accident added another layer. He showed up to his retirement press conference with the finger bandage. He said it wouldn't have affected his decision, but acknowledged it would have kept him out for at least 2 months. The Bulls were already falling apart. The dynasty was gone, and the injury gave management one more reason not to rebuild around Jordan. One cheap cutter, one severed tendon, and one of basketball's greatest stories quietly closed its chapter for good. Robert Height, D.U. I waiver. On February 1st, 2007, rookie guard Robert Height was pulled over in Miami Beach for speeding. Police claimed he had bloodshot eyes, slurred speech, and smelled of alcohol. That led to a DUI arrest. He was charged, booked, and missed the Miami Heat game that night. But here's the twist. His blood alcohol level turned out to be under the legal limit. The DUI charge was eventually dropped. Still, the Heat didn't wait around. They waived him the same day. Why? Because they needed the roster spot. Eddie Jones, a veteran guard and familiar face, was set to rejoin the team. The front office made a quick call, move out the unproven rookie, and make room for the seasoned vet. So even though Height was never convicted and was technically cleared, the fallout had already hit. The arrest and optics were enough. The Heat cut him loose without blinking. Height landed with the Sioux Falls, Skyforce shortly after, but his NBA window slammed shut right then and there. The timeline tells the whole story. Arrested in the morning, missed the game that night, and waived the same day. The Eddie Jones signing made the move look strategic, not disciplinary, but the timing said it all. This was a case where legal clearance didn't matter. In a league built on optics, timing, and tight rosters, Height's brief NBA stint ended the moment the blue lights flashed. The DUI didn't stick, but neither did his career. Pacers-Kings brawl. On November 10th, 1995, a regular season game between the Pacers and Kings exploded into one of the biggest fights in NBA history. It started when Dale Davis laid a hard foul on Michael Smith. Smith took offense, Davis retaliated, and suddenly the court was chaos. Players shoved, yelled, and within seconds, both benches emptied. The fight lasted 5 minutes, and the league didn't take it lightly. 16 players were suspended, 8 from each team. That kind of mass punishment had never happened before. Davis and Smith got hit hardest. 2-game suspensions without pay and $20,000 fines each. Dwayne Coswell got 1 game and $7,500 just for stepping off the bench. 13 other players, including big names like Reggie Miller, were handed one-game suspensions and $2,500 fines. Even though most of them didn't throw a single punt, they got punished just for crossing the line onto the court. The NBA's bench-leaving rule got put under the spotlight. Didn't matter if you fought or not. If you left your seat, you got suspended. Period. With so many players out, the league had to get creative. They staggered the suspensions alphabetically, so both teams would still have enough guys to play their next games. This wasn't just a dust-up, it was a turning point. The league used the incident as a model for how to crack down on future brawl, and it set the tone for how seriously they treat even the appearance of bench clearing. 16 players in one night, fines flying, rotations scrambled. The Pacers-Kings brawl wasn't just a fight, it was a warning. Steve Francis refused Vancouver. In June of 1999, the Vancouver Grizzlies used their number 2 draft pick on Steve Francis. But instead of celebrating, Francis went public with his refusal to play for them. He listed reasons like distance from Maryland, tax issues, fewer endorsement opportunities in Canada, and even claimed it wasn't God's will for him to play there. He told reporters, "I damn near cried when I got taken by the Grizzlies." 2 months later, the Grizzlies traded him in a massive 3-team deal involving 11 players, the biggest trade in NBA history at that point. Francis and Tony Massenburg went to Houston. Vancouver got Othello Harrington, Brent Price, Michael Dickerson, Antoine Carr, picks, and cash. Grizzlies fans felt burned. Francis never wore their jersey, never touched the court, but when he returned to Vancouver with the Rockets, the crowd booed relentlessly. The whole saga fed into an atmosphere of resentment and instability for the franchise. It didn't help that just 2 years later, Vancouver lost its team entirely. The Grizzlies packed up and moved to Memphis. Many pointed to the Francis debacle as one of the early signs that things were going off the rail. Francis didn't apologize. He stood by everything and played his rookie year in Houston, where he won co-rookie of the year. His actions became a blueprint for how top draft picks could flex leverage. That saga didn't just change a roster, it reshaped how teams approach draft interviews, pre-draft commitments, and international player relations. One defiant rookie forced the biggest trade of the year and rewrote how future picks would be handled. Carlos Boozer broke his hand on a gym bag just days into October 2010. Carlos Boozer told reporters he broke his right hand at home in the dark. According to him, he heard the doorbell ring, tripped over a gym bag, fell awkwardly, and popped the 5th metacarpal in his shooting hand. He had just signed a 5-year deal worth about $75 million with the Bulls. The team confirmed the injury. He needed surgery and would miss around 8 weeks. He actually ended up missing 15 games. But right after the announcement, people started poking holes in the story. Some reports claimed the Bulls were suspicious about the details. Boozer denied that completely, saying there was no team investigation and calling the speculation false. Coach Tom Thibodeau backed him up, calling the whole thing a non-issue. Still, the story raised eyebrows. Boozer said he was alone when it happened. There were no witnesses, and the idea of a world-class athlete tripping over his own bag and breaking his hand sounded off to a lot of people. The timing didn't help. The Bulls had just committed major money, and suddenly their new forward was sidelined before the season even started. The jokes came fast. Fans and writers suggested the injury might have been something else entirely, and the gym bag story was just a cover. Whether or not you believe him, the fallout was real. Boozer missed critical time early in the season, and the mystery around the injury stuck with him. A simple trip in the dark became one of the weirdest preseason setbacks a high-priced player ever tried to explain. Nick Van Exel shoved a referee. April 9th, 1996, the Lakers were in Denver when Nick Van Exel got hit with a technical foul during a timeout. Then he got a second one. That meant ejection. But Van Exel didn't just leave the floor. He stormed toward referee Ron Gerritsen, called him a little midget, and used his forearm to shove him into the scorer's table. Gerritsen, who happened to be the son of the NBA's head of officiating, stumbled into the table. Teammates had to restrain Van Exel before things escalated further. The league didn't hold back. Van Exel was suspended for 7 games, fined $25,000, and lost another $100,000 to $61,000 in salary. The total cost? Roughly $186,000. At that point, it was the 3rd longest suspension in NBA history for on-court misconduct. Magic Johnson called it inexcusable. Jerry West said the Lakers were embarrassed. And NBA referees? They thought Van Exel got off easy. The referees union said the punishment should have been even worse. The whole thing was a mess. It wasn't just a shove, it was a full-on embarrassment for the team, the league, and Van Exel himself. And yet, it became a landmark case. Before the malice era, this was the league drawing a line. Touch a ref and you're done. 7 games. Nearly $200,000. Van Exel sat the rest of the regular season. The Lakers limped into the playoffs without him, and the NBA made sure that any player thinking about laying hands on a referee had a fresh reminder why that was a very expensive mistake. Daniel House broke bubble protocol in September of 2020, right in the middle of the NBA playoffs at the Orlando bubble. Daniel House got himself ejected, not from a game, but from the entire Disney campus. Reports came in that House had let an unauthorized woman into his hotel room. The NBA's investigation found enough to act. They ruled him out of the Rockets-Lakers series and kicked him out of the bubble entirely. The woman was widely reported to be a COVID testing official, which only made the situation worse. The league never confirmed her identity, but the optics were already a disaster. This wasn't just a rule violation. It broke the one protocol the NBA absolutely could not ignore. At the time, House was averaging over 11 points and nearly 6 rebounds in the playoffs. He was a key piece for Houston. Once he was removed, the Rockets, already trailing 2-1, collapsed. They lost the next 2 games and the series. Financially, House forfeited about $30,000 in salary. But the bigger cost was his reputation. In a bubble praised for keeping COVID out, House's scandal became the headline. The league used the incident as a warning. This wasn't going to be handled quietly. No more chances, no more exceptions. If you broke the bubble, you were out. For House, the timing couldn't have been worse. Playoff spotlight, national coverage, and the most unique season in NBA history. He didn't just get sent home, he left behind one of the few actual scandals of the bubble, and the Rockets never recovered. Jason Kidd spilled his drink to get a timeout. In November of 2013, the Brooklyn Nets were trailing the Lakers with just over 8 seconds left and no timeouts remaining. That's when head coach Jason Kidd pulled one of the strangest moves in sideline history. Holding a cup of soda, he appeared to mouth the words, "Hit me," to Tyshawn Taylor. Taylor brushed past him. Kidd dropped the cup, and soda splattered across the court. The game had to be stopped. Staff cleaned up the mess. The Nets got a free huddle to draw up a final play. It didn't work. Paul Pierce missed a 3, but the stunt gave Kidd what he needed, a timeout, without calling one. The league didn't find it clever. They fined Kidd $50,000, calling the spill an intentional act to manipulate the game. Kidd denied everything. He said the cup slipped, claimed he had sweaty hands, said it was just a heat-of-the-moment accident. Taylor backed him up and said he didn't even know Kidd was holding anything. But video showed Kidd clearly mouthing, "Hit me," and players around the league noticed. Nick Young called it vet stuff, suggesting it was smart, not dirty. The NBA didn't agree. The fine wasn't just for the spill, it was a message. Coaches can't manipulate game flow like that, even if it's subtle. Cupgate didn't change the game's outcome, but it did leave a legacy. It was a rare moment where a head coach tried to hack the clock in plain sight and got caught. Neil Cohalan got escorted out by cops. In 1947, during the very first NBA season, back when it was still called the BAA, New York Knicks head coach Neil Cohalan became the first coach in league history to get ejected from a game. But he didn't just walk off quietly. After getting tossed for arguing with referees, Cohalan flat out refused to leave the court. Officials tried to talk him down, but he wouldn't budge, so they called in backup, actual police officers. Yep, the first coach ejection in pro basketball history ended with the head coach being physically escorted out of the arena by law enforcement. Not a fine, not a suspension, just an old school standoff that needed badges to break it up. This wasn't just some wild anecdote. It's been confirmed through newspaper archives and early NBA retrospectives. It's one of those forgotten pieces of basketball history that somehow reads like a slapstick routine, but actually happened. Cohalan only coached that one season for the Knicks. Maybe he saw it coming, but in the record books, he's got a forever claim. First coach tossed from an NBA game, and the first one dragged out by police for refusing to leave. So next time a coach flips out on the sideline, just remember, at least they didn't have to call security to clear the floor. Cohalan already owns that legacy. Steve Blake fought his own teammate. In the summer of 2002, Maryland was fresh off an NCAA championship. Spirits were high, pressure was higher, and in the middle of a practice session, Steve Blake threw hands. Blake, a senior point guard known for his intensity, got into a full-blown fistfight with freshman John Gilchrist. This wasn't a chest bump and some yelling. They traded actual punches. And yes, it was all caught on video. The setting? A summer camp scrimmage at Cole Fieldhouse. The footage eventually made its way online, where it exploded in sports forums and highlight reels. Reddit users chimed in with lines like, "Blake ain't afraid to throw the hands and his legs buckled," turning a college practice clip into a viral fight breakdown. This was pre-social media era stuff, so for a training clip to blow up the way it did said something. It wasn't just a scuffle, it was a sign. Blake didn't back down. Not in college, not later in the NBA. Years down the line, Gilbert Arenas even mentioned having fights with him too. Blake's reputation as a no-nonsense, high-voltage player didn't start in the pros. It started here, with Gilchrist, in a practice that boiled over. Gilchrist held his own in the brawl, but the altercation cemented something for Blake. He wasn't there to babysit freshmen. He was wired for confrontation, and that's exactly what he brought with him every time he stepped on the court, college, pro, or anywhere in between. Charlie Ward made anti-Semitic remarks in Bible study. In April of 2001, a New York Times Magazine article lit a fuse under the Knicks locker room and the NBA at large. During a team Bible study, Charlie Ward, then a guard for the New York Knicks, was quoted making inflammatory remarks about Jewish people. Ward reportedly said, "Jews are stubborn. Why did they persecute Jesus? Unless he knew something they didn't want to accept. They had his blood on their hands." The quote sparked instant outrage, not just for its content, but for the platform. A publicized conversation during a team activity inside one of the league's biggest markets. He also made additional statements implying that Jewish people had too much influence in certain industries, feeding into long-standing and harmful anti-Semitic stereotypes. Public backlash followed fast. Jewish organizations condemned the comments, and several media outlets pressed the Knicks and the NBA for a response. Ward didn't walk it back. He defended the remarks by saying they were scripturally based, though he later claimed he wasn't trying to offend anyone. But that defense did little to ease the controversy. Inside Madison Square Garden, tensions were high. Several local Jewish groups called for public apologies and sensitivity training. The Knicks issued a statement, but no league-wide discipline followed. While Ward continued to play, the incident stuck. It exposed a crack in the league's polished image and forced a conversation about religious expression, ignorance, and the limits of public speech, especially when it comes from the pulpit of professional sports. Marcus Morris, arrested over casino debt. On July 27, 2025, Marcus Morris was arrested at Fort Lauderdale Hollywood Airport. Authorities picked him up on an out-of-state warrant from Nevada tied to casino fraud. According to charges, Morris allegedly failed to pay back 2 casino markers, one for about $115,000 at MGM Grand and another for around $150,000 at the Wynn. Combined, $265,000. Nevada filed felony charges, issuing fraudulent checks over $1,200 and theft over $100,000. Morris was held in a Broward County jail for 51 hours without bail. Reports said he was denied food and water during the entire stay. At his bond hearing, the judge refused to release him. Bail would only happen if Nevada canceled the warrant or completed extradition. Morris later responded on Instagram. He admitted taking markers, but insisted he never left the casino with any money. He said he never wrote a check, never pocketed cash, and just misunderstood how markers work. His agent called the charges insane. His brother Markieff said the arrest, in front of family, was humiliating. The timing made it worse. Morris had recently moved into broadcasting as an ESPN analyst. Now, instead of studio time, he's got a court hearing scheduled in Las Vegas this August. What's drawing attention isn't just the arrest, it's the amount, the legal framing, and the fact that even with efforts to pay, the judge kept him in custody. It's not just about money, it's about what happens when a casino marker becomes a criminal case. Chris Webber took $180,000 from a booster. From 1988 to 1993, Michigan star Chris Webber received about $280,000 in cash and gifts from Detroit booster Ed Martin. Martin, who was later indicted for running an illegal gambling operation tied to Detroit auto plants, treated the money as loans he expected to be repaid once players went pro. Webber originally denied everything, but when investigators closed in, he got caught lying to a grand jury. He eventually pleaded guilty to criminal contempt, admitting he took the money and had repaid only about $38,000. Michigan's response was massive. In 2002, the school self-imposed penalties. They vacated the 1992 and 1993 Final Four runs, took down the banners, forfeited games, and banned themselves from postseason play. The NCAA later added more penalties, including probation, reduced scholarships, and a 10-year forced disassociation from Webber and others involved. The Fab Five, once the coolest thing in college basketball, was officially erased from Michigan's history books. The banners were taken out of Chrysler Arena and haven't returned. What made it so scandalous wasn't just the amount of money, it was who it involved. Webber was the face of a movement, and when his truth unraveled, the school's reputation went with it. Even today, it's one of the most infamous cases of NCAA rule violations. Michigan didn't just lose wins, it lost a legacy. Webber's silence, the cash flow, and the grand jury lies all turned what was once a golden era into a scandal that still lingers over college basketball. Don McClain, suspended for steroids. In November of 2000, Don McClain made NBA history, but not the kind players want. He became the first player ever suspended for testing positive for anabolic steroids. At the time, McClain was a reserve forward on the Miami Heat, years removed from his high-scoring college days at UCLA. The league had only recently begun steroid testing, launching the policy in the late 1990s. McClain's 5-game suspension marked the first time the NBA actually enforced it. The league confirmed the suspension without providing specific details, but the message was clear. Performance-enhancing drugs were officially on the radar. Public reaction? Confused and amused? Charles Barkley famously joked on TNT, "I've seen Don McClain naked, and he doesn't use steroids." Fans didn't associate PEDs with fringe players like McClain, but that's exactly what made the case important. It didn't take long for others to follow. Matt Geiger in 2001, Sumaila Samaki in 2002, but McClain was the first, the face of the NBA's entry into serious drug enforcement. Before this, steroid suspicion mostly lived in baseball and football. The NBA had dodged the conversation for years. McClain's suspension kicked off a shift in tone. Though his playing career faded quietly, his name stayed in the rule books. Every later PED suspension traces back to that moment in 2000, when a role player on the Heat accidentally carved out a legacy he never asked for. McClain's case wasn't about star power, it was about precedent, and the league used it to draw a line that still exists today. Jay Vincent scammed 20,000 people. Between 2006 and 2009, former NBA player Jay Vincent ran a fake job certification company. It was called Foreclosure Bank Inspection Company, and on the surface, it looked like a legitimate opportunity. The company promised to train applicants to inspect foreclosed homes. All you had to do was pay $149 for liability insurance and $89 for a background check. Roughly 20,000 people fell for it. There were no jobs, no inspections, no bank contracts. The certifications were completely worthless, and the $2 million they collected went straight to Vincent and his partner. Federal prosecutors said the entire business was a mail fraud scheme wrapped in a promise of employment. On September 28, 2010, Jay Vincent pleaded guilty in federal court. He admitted to 1 count of fraud and 1 count of tax violation. It was a staggering fall. Vincent had once led Michigan State to a national title with Magic Johnson and had carved out a solid NBA career. But now, he was the first former player many could remember to be federally convicted for scamming the public. This wasn't just fraud. It was a betrayal of desperate people looking for work during a recession. No checks, no jobs, just empty promises, and an ex-athlete cashing in on trust. Jay Vincent used his credibility to make fake hope look real. That's what made it a scandal. Kenyon Martin's stalker. During a playoff game back in 2012 between the Nuggets and the Lakers, things got real weird for a second. With just over a minute left in the second quarter, a 20-year-old woman literally walked out onto the court while the game was still going, just casually strolled near midcourt like she had business there. Security and a ref jumped in right away, pulled her off the floor, and the game went right back to normal. Now here's where it gets messy. The woman was identified as Savannah McMillan Christmas from Denver. As they were escorting her off, she yelled out, "Where's Kenyon?" Yeah, she was asking about Kenyon Martin, who wasn't even on the Nuggets anymore. He'd been with the team until 2011, but was playing elsewhere by then. Reports said she had a history of following several Nuggets players and had already been banned from the arena. She was arrested on the spot, charged with trespassing, and taken to a local detention center. The strange part, she wasn't drunk or anything. Officials said she just seemed disoriented. But hold on, after all that, her dad and police made it clear she wasn't actually Kenyon's stalker. The media had jumped the gun on that one. She had been misidentified after the game, and no past stalking behavior had officially been connected to her. The confirmed truth, she walked on the court, shouted for Kenyon, got removed, and was charged for trespassing. She had been banned before, but there was no proof she'd stalked anyone. Everything else, that came from assumptions that didn't stick. Chris Anderson's investigation. Back in May of 2012, Chris Anderson's Colorado home was searched by law enforcement investigating potential child videos. Devices were seized, but he wasn't arrested or charged. He cooperated fully. The whole thing kicked off from a California tip, but it quickly unraveled into something way different. Turns out, he had met a girl named Paris Dunn, who told him she was 21. She was actually 17. Now in Colorado, 17 is the legal age of consent, but because she sent explicit photos, it opened the door for legal trouble since those still count. Then everything took a sharp left. Investigators found a Canadian woman named Shelley Lynn Chartier had been behind everything. She impersonated both Anderson and Dunn online, created fake profiles, wrote emails pretending to be multiple people, and even made up a character named Tom Taylor. She tricked Dunn, threatened her with the photos, and tried to extort her. Authorities from both the United States and Canada worked together, tracked the fake accounts, traced IP addresses back to Manitoba, and found out Chartier had been the one orchestrating the entire mess. Chartier was arrested in January of 2013, later pleaded guilty, and was sentenced to 18 months in prison in Canada. By September of 2013, Anderson was publicly declared a victim. He was totally cleared. He hadn't done anything illegal. His legal team called it a hoax. That was like a version of the Manti Te'o situation, but more extreme. Anderson returned to the league, played with Miami, Memphis, and Cleveland, and no charges were ever filed against him. Authorities officially confirmed he was tricked and his name was cleared. Monte Ellis's moped incident. In late August of 2008, Monte Ellis got into a low-speed crash on a moped in Jackson, Mississippi. It wasn't just a scrape. He tore a deltoid ligament, had a nasty high ankle sprain, and needed surgery. All of this happened just weeks after signing a massive 6-year deal worth $66 million. Ellis tried to cover it up by saying he got hurt playing pickup basketball, but when the team's medical staff looked closer, they figured out the injury didn't add up. They eventually confirmed it was from the moped accident. That little fib ended up costing him. His contract specifically banned risky activities like riding mopeds. That's part of the standard league contract. Because he broke it, the Warriors hit him with a 30-game suspension without pay. That included preseason games and ended up costing him around $3 million in lost salary. Coach Don Nelson and executive Chris Mullin didn't even agree with how harsh the punishment was, but team president Robert Rowell held his ground and enforced the suspension. Ellis had surgery in late August, but his return took longer than expected. He didn't play again until January 23, 2009, and even then he dropped 20 points in his first game back. But the damage wasn't just physical. The whole incident reportedly strained his relationship with the Warriors front office. It was one of those moments that stuck. Despite all that, Ellis still had a solid career. He got traded in 2012 to the Bucks and played later for Dallas and Indiana before retiring in 2017. The moped story just ended up being a wild, expensive lesson. By the way, if you guys want to subscribe, I'm going to be posting every day. Thanks. Anyways, Bulls-Celtics controversy. The first round of the Eastern Conference playoffs in 2009 between the Bulls and the Celtics was already intense. But things got even messier when Bulls fans started pointing fingers at the refs. Game 5 became the main talking point. With just 2 seconds left in overtime and Boston up by 2, Rajon Rondo smacked Brad Miller in the face during a drive. Miller's mouth was bleeding, but the officials called it a personal foul instead of a flagrant. That mattered a lot. If it had been a flagrant, the Bulls could have chosen a free throw shooter, but since it wasn't, Miller had to shoot while injured. He missed the first, then had to intentionally miss the second, but it didn't hit the rim, so Boston got the ball and ran out the clock. Rondo even admitted later that he had no play on the ball. Earlier in that same game, Rondo tripped Kirk Hinrich, sending him to the locker room for stitches. Then in Game 6, Rondo threw Hinrich into the scorer's table, an obvious cheap shot that drew a flagrant one that let him stay in the game. But 2 years earlier, Robert Horry did almost the same thing to Steve Nash and got hit with a flagrant 2 and a 2-game suspension. Even after reviewing both games, the league made no changes, no suspension, no upgraded calls. Meanwhile, Dwight Howard was suspended for Game 6 of Orlando's series against Philadelphia after review of a headshot on Samuel Dalembert that had only been ruled a technical in the moment. The league upgraded that one to a flagrant 2 and benched him. Rondo, though, played on. Sean Banks' robbery arrest. On August 5, 2011, former basketball player Sean Banks was involved in a high-speed chase following a home invasion in New Jersey. He and 3 others broke into homes in Jefferson Township and Sparta, then tried to flee police in a stolen SUV. The chase ended in a crash, and prosecutors tied the group to the James Bond Gang, a burglary ring known for targeting upscale homes across New Jersey and New York. But that wasn't the end of Banks' legal mess. In 2013, he pleaded guilty to assaulting his girlfriend. The details weren't pretty. He hit her with a broomstick and a belt and prevented her from leaving. The court gave him probation and required counseling. Then came more trouble. In March 2014, an arrest warrant was issued because Banks didn't show up for sentencing tied to that same domestic violence case. That violation triggered new legal consequences, and by then, he was staring down the possibility of prison time for multiple charges. It's not clear exactly how the original burglary case wrapped up, but by 2014, Banks was tangled in overlapping court cases: burglary, assault, probation violations, and evading arrest. He'd once been considered a top prospect, but all those legal problems completely derailed any hope of reviving a basketball career. His time in the NBA and D-League had already fizzled out around 2011, and what followed was a steady decline into the criminal justice system. From being one of the most hyped high school players in the country to ducking court dates and facing prison time, Banks went from hardwood star to court defendant in just a few years. Eric Murdoch's Rutgers lawsuit. Eric Murdoch, former NBA guard, joined Rutgers in July of 2010 as director of basketball player development. He worked under head coach Mike Rice, supporting players on and off the court. But by June 2012, Murdoch started raising serious concerns about Rice's behavior, physical intimidation, verbal abuse, and homophobic slurs directed at players. Murdoch claimed Rice's actions broke school policy and New Jersey's anti-bullying laws. Despite flagging the abuse to Rice and athletic director Tim Pernetti, no action was taken. Later that year, Murdoch got his hands on practice footage through a public records request. The tapes showed Rice throwing basketballs at players' heads, shoving them, yelling slurs, and kicking during practices. In November, he showed a 40-minute edited video to Rutgers officials. Still, Rice was only suspended for 3 games and fined $50,000 in December. Then on July 2nd, Murdoch's contract wasn't renewed. Rutgers said it was due to an unrelated absence, but Murdoch believed it was retaliation. By April 5th, 2013, Murdoch had filed a whistleblower lawsuit against Rutgers, naming Rice, Pernetti, and 2 university presidents. He cited wrongful termination, hostile work environment, breach of contract, and violations of state whistleblower law. Just days earlier, ESPN aired the unedited video nationally. Public backlash exploded. Rice was fired the next day. Pernetti resigned soon after. In August 2016, Rutgers settled with Murdoch for $500,000. His lawsuit didn't just take down a coach, it forced the university to change how it responds to abuse. The fallout was huge, and Murdoch's actions reshaped the conversation about accountability in college sports. Bob Delaney's mob infiltration. Back in the mid-1970s, Bob Delaney was a New Jersey state trooper with a fake name, a fake company, and a wire taped inside his jockstrap. For nearly 3 years, he lived as Bobby Covert, working undercover to infiltrate the Genovese and Bruno crime families. His front business? A trucking company used to blend in with mob operations on the East Coast. He wasn't just playing pretend. He recorded hours of conversations, took photos, and gathered enough evidence to fuel 34 arrests and nearly 100 indictments in September of 1977. The whole thing was called Project Alpha, and it took a massive toll on him. After the operation ended, Delaney didn't bounce back easily. He battled symptoms of post-traumatic stress, constant anxiety, disconnection, emotional fallout from living a double life for so long. He found his way out through basketball, starting with local games, then the Continental Basketball Association. He eventually became a full-time NBA referee by the 1987 season. Delaney went on to officiate over 1,000 regular season games, 120 playoff games, 7 NBA Finals, and the 1998 All-Star Game. All that time, the NBA never publicized his undercover past. It wasn't until 2008, when Delaney published his memoir, Covert, that most people even heard his story. He retired in 2011, but kept working behind the scenes with officiating leadership. His stories, now part of museum archives, podcasts, and basketball history. From recording mob bosses to calling fouls on the court, Bob Delaney lived 2 completely different lives and managed to survive both. Dennis Rodman's North Korea visits. In February of 2013, Dennis Rodman became the first American to meet Kim Jong-un in person. The trip was organized by Vice Media, and Rodman arrived with a film crew and Harlem Globetrotters to stage an exhibition game in Pyongyang. From that moment, Rodman and Kim started what he called a friend-for-life bond. Rodman's visits were framed as basketball diplomacy, but critics weren't buying it. Diplomats and policy analysts argued that these trips gave North Korea a way to present a false image of openness while repression continued inside the country. Things only got more bizarre. In January of 2014, Rodman serenaded Kim with happy birthday during a game, then went on CNN and launched a rant, blaming imprisoned missionary Kenneth Bay for his own arrest. Rodman later walked that back, saying he'd been drinking at the time. He visited North Korea at least 6 times between 2013 and 2017. He trained their national basketball team, visited orphanages, gave out gifts, including a copy of Trump's Art of the Deal, and even brought presents for Kim's daughter. Speculation swirled about whether Rodman was acting as a back channel between Kim and Trump, but both sides denied any coordination. Rodman faced massive backlash. The NBA and Retired Players Association distanced themselves, and public reaction ranged from confusion to outrage. Critics warned that even if his intentions were genuine, the optics handed Kim a propaganda win. Still, Rodman's name popped up when Kenneth Bay was released later in 2014. Bay himself said the attention helped, but the U.S. government was clear. Rodman's visits were personal, not official. James Posey's DUI arrest. On April 9, 2007, around 4 a.m, James Posey was arrested in Miami Beach. Officers spotted his Mercedes-Benz just sitting in the middle of the road while he chatted with pedestrians and passing drivers. Not exactly a great look. According to the police, he showed classic signs of impairment. Bloodshot eyes, slurred speech, smelled of alcohol, and he wasn't steady on his feet. Posey was booked into Miami-Dade County Jail and released later that day on $1,000 bond. He issued a public apology, but that didn't end the scrutiny. As for the Heat, they didn't jump to punish him. Coach Pat Riley said they needed all the facts before making any decisions. Posey even suited up the very next night to play against Charlotte. The team's approach, low profile, no grand statements, no benching, just a wait-and-see attitude. Eventually, Posey pleaded no contest to a reduced charge of reckless driving. The original DUI charge didn't stick. Still, NBA Commissioner David Stern stepped in and suspended him for the first game of the 2007 to 2008 season. So while he avoided jail time, Posey didn't completely dodge consequences. The arrest marked a bump in the road during his stint with Miami. Even if the Heat chose to keep things quiet in the moment, the league still held him accountable, and that one-game suspension came with the message: off-court behavior doesn't go unnoticed, even if it takes a little time to catch up. Donald Sterling's '06 discrimination lawsuit. In August of 2006, the United States Department of Justice filed a federal lawsuit against Donald Sterling, his wife Rochelle, the Sterling Family Trust, and related entities. The government accused them of violating the Fair Housing Act by discriminating against Black, Hispanic, and non-Korean renters in Los Angeles. They managed more than 5,000 units across over 119 buildings, mostly in areas like Koreatown and Beverly Hills. The Department of Justice said there was a consistent pattern, refusing to rent to Black and Latino applicants, families with children, and anyone who was not Korean in certain neighborhoods. Investigators found internal memos that tracked tenant race, building notices preferring Korean renters, and instructions to staff that certain groups were undesirable. Statistical analysis backed it up. Sterling's properties had far fewer Black and Hispanic tenants than expected based on neighborhood demographics. Sterling denied the accusations and claimed that no tenant was denied housing due to race. His legal team said the settlement was driven by insurers, not by any admission of wrongdoing. In November of 2009, Sterling settled the case. He agreed to pay $2,725,000. $100,000 of that went to the government as a civil penalty, while $2,625,000 was set aside for victims of discrimination. The settlement also required 3 years of independent monitoring and mandatory annual fair housing training for all staff. This was not Sterling's first brush with housing bias claims. In 2003, he had settled a separate lawsuit over efforts to displace non-Korean tenants. This case became one of the largest housing discrimination settlements ever at the time, exposing long-standing discriminatory practices within his real estate business. Dermar Johnson's car crash. On September 13, 2002, Dermar Johnson was in a high-speed single-car crash near his home in Atlanta. The car slammed into a tree, caught fire, and exploded. Somehow, Johnson and 2 others managed to escape before the fire consumed the vehicle. The crash left Johnson with 4 fractured vertebrae in his neck. Doctors said he came terrifyingly close to being paralyzed. To stabilize the injury, he wore a halo brace around his head and neck for nearly 2 months. Because of the injuries, Johnson missed the entire 2002 to 2003 NBA season. There were rumors floating around about alcohol being involved, but no DUI charges were ever filed and no official accusation was made. What followed was a recovery most people didn't expect. After just about 6 months, Johnson was back on the court. He didn't play for Phoenix after a short signing, but he joined the Long Beach Jam in the ABA and kept grinding. Eventually, in 2003, he landed with the New York Knicks, marking one of the most improbable comebacks in the league at that time. He went from a near paralysis car explosion to playing NBA ball again in under a year. The crash could have ended everything, but Johnson's return showed how much resilience and fight he had left. His basketball career might have changed forever that night, but he didn't let it be the end. Mark Cuban's referee fines. Mark Cuban holds the title of the most fined owner in NBA history. Between 2000 and 2013, he racked up at least 20 fines, with total penalties hitting around $2,240,000. Most of those, over 80 individual fines, came from blasting referees, either in press conferences, interviews, or right there on the court. The NBA Constitution lets the commissioner fine any behavior deemed harmful to the league, and Cuban seemed to keep testing the boundary. In November of 2003, he was fined $25,000 for tearing into refs after a loss to Memphis. He called them out by name and said they had too much influence over the outcome of games. Then in January of 2006, he was hit with another $25,000 fine after he stormed the court during a playoff game against the Spurs. He even called Bruce Bowen a thug, which did not help his case. The biggest fine came in June of 2006. After Game 5 of the NBA Finals, Cuban stormed onto the court again, shouted at refs, and allegedly cursed at Commissioner David Stern. He claimed the league was rigged. That outburst earned him a $250,000 fine. Stern later said Cuban's behavior was not healthy for the league. Despite all this, Cuban kept going. He repeatedly said he did not care about the fines and promised to donate the same amount to charity whenever he was penalized. His repeated defiance eventually pushed the NBA to tighten rules and create the no-tolerance policy for public complaints about officiating. Even with all the consequences, Cuban never stopped speaking his mind. Magic Johnson's '92 comeback backlash. On February 9, 1992, Magic Johnson made his official return to the court during the NBA All-Star Game in Orlando. Fans voted him in as a starter, and he delivered big. 25 points, 9 assists, 5 rebounds, and the MVP award. But behind the celebration was a storm of fear and resistance. Some players weren't happy about his return. Karl Malone openly questioned the risks, saying he had cuts and scabs all over and didn't feel safe sharing the floor with someone who had HIV. Other players like A.C. Green, Byron Scott, Charles Barkley, and Isaiah Thomas voiced their own concerns, debating whether it was safe or fair. A few even refused to practice with him before the game. Back then, a lot of players and the public believed HIV could be passed through sweat or casual contact. Medical science had already proven otherwise, but the fear stuck. Magic later said the backlash hurt him deeply, especially after he took every precaution and wanted to play again. Commissioner David Stern stepped in and made it clear Magic had every right to play. The league brought in medical experts, reviewed protocols, and implemented rules to stop games immediately if a player was bleeding. Stern made sure the league took a leadership role, not just in sports, but in education. Magic's performance that night didn't just win the MVP, it started changing minds. He showed that fear didn't need to control the conversation. That game helped push the league and the public toward a better understanding of HIV, and his courage reshaped the dialogue around the virus in sports. Rod Strickland's DUI arrest history. Rod Strickland's NBA career hit several off-court roadblocks due to repeated DUI arrests, most of them while he was with the Washington Wizards from 1997 to 2001. His first known DUI came in September of 1997 in Washington, D.C., after making an illegal U-turn. Reports say he told officers, "Do you know who I am?" during the stop. Then in April of 1999, he was arrested again after a Wizards game around 3:45 in the morning. Police said he failed sobriety tests, refused a breathalyzer, ran red lights, and straddled lanes. He was charged with both DUI and reckless driving. He later pleaded not guilty and was acquitted of both charges by a jury. The third arrest came on January 8, 2001. Strickland had already been suspended for missing practice and then got picked up again for DUI just days later. This time, he eventually pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 10 days in jail that April. Even after that, the pattern didn't stop. By 2010, Strickland had racked up at least 4 separate DUI arrests, according to multiple sources. Although he was known for his smooth game and high assist numbers, the legal issues began to cloud his reputation. His recurring run-ins with law enforcement became one of the more public examples of how off-court struggles can derail even the most talented players. These incidents followed him into his early coaching years, serving as a cautionary backdrop to a career that could have been defined entirely by basketball. Tyrone Nesby's fraud conviction. In 2007, former NBA forward Tyrone Nesby was caught up in a serious federal fraud case. He was involved in a scheme where false employment documents were used to help inflate auto loan applications. These fake verifications made it seem like borrowers had more income than they actually did, which helped them qualify for bigger car loans than they should have been approved for. Nesby's specific role involved submitting those falsified documents, basically forging or helping to forge job details to deceive lenders. It wasn't just a side hustle or a one-off mistake. It was part of a larger fraud network targeting dealerships and financial institutions. That level of involvement landed him a major sentence. He was convicted on charges including conspiracy, mail fraud, and wire fraud, and sentenced to 27 years and 4 months in federal prison. Despite how serious the conviction was, the story didn't get huge national attention. Nesby had a lower public profile after retiring from the NBA, so the media coverage stayed limited, but the legal consequences were major. Among former NBA players dealing with legal fallout post-retirement, this was one of the most severe cases in terms of sentencing. Nesby's conviction showed that even players who fly under the radar can end up at the center of major financial crime cases. It also highlighted how financial schemes can quietly involve high-profile individuals who might think they'll go unnoticed. NBC's NBA coverage bias. From 1990 through 2002, NBC had the rights to air NBA games, and they made it very clear which cities they cared about. During the primetime slots between 5:30 and 8 Eastern, NBC heavily favored teams from New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles. So if you were a Knicks, Bulls, or Lakers fan, your team was always front and center. Everyone else, good luck catching more than a few nationally televised games a year. One of the most glaring examples was how little attention Houston got. The Rockets won back-to-back titles in 1994 and 1995. They had Hakeem Olajuwon, a top 5 center all time, and yet they were barely featured in NBC's marquee broadcasts. Their only finals under NBC spotlight came in 1995. Ironically, the only finals during that entire stretch that didn't include one of NBC's top 3 teams. Over those 12 years, the finals included the Bulls 6 times, the Lakers 4 times, and the Knicks twice. The Bulls and Lakers made NBC a ratings machine, and it showed in the network's scheduling. Chicago, Los Angeles, and New York are the 3 biggest TV markets in the country, and NBC leaned into that hard, giving smaller market teams, even successful ones, a backseat. Media and fans noticed. Phrases like East Coast bias and NBC loves Lakers started circulating. Writers pointed out how Houston, despite being the 4th largest city in the country, got little respect. It wasn't about performance, it was about marketing. NBC wanted stars and cities that sold. For everyone else, it was scraps. Darrell Armstrong's 2003 arrest. On July 7th, 2003, Darrell Armstrong was arrested outside a nightclub in downtown Orlando. According to reports, he had stepped into the street to hail a taxi. Officer Teresa Joyce, who identified herself as law enforcement, told him to move to the sidewalk. When she reached out to guide him, Armstrong slapped her hand away. The situation escalated quickly. Sergeant Orlando Roland later stated that Officer Joyce suffered sprains to her middle and ring finger, injuries that came from her hand getting caught in Armstrong's clothing during the brief physical exchange. Armstrong was booked and charged with felony battery on a law enforcement officer and misdemeanor resisting arrest without violence. He posted $1,000 bond and was released shortly afterward. His side of the story? Armstrong said he didn't realize she was a police officer and claimed he was reacting to being grabbed from behind. His attorney backed that up, calling it a natural reflex. Armstrong himself told reporters, "I only knocked her hand," and described it later at a youth basketball clinic as an unfortunate accident. At the time, Armstrong had just signed with the New Orleans Hornets after spending 9 seasons with the Orlando Magic. The arrest added an unwelcome headline, but it didn't derail his move. The case was eventually dismissed early in court, though full public records on the dismissal are limited. In the end, the charges didn't stick, and the legal consequences disappeared as fast as the press covered. It was a moment of controversy, but not one that followed Armstrong for the rest of his career. Billy Hunter's removal. Billy Hunter went from running the NBPA to being shown the door in less than 2 years, and it all started when Derek Fisher called for an internal review back in early 2012. That review ballooned into a 469-page report. Yeah, 469, and it laid out all kinds of mess. The investigators didn't find criminal activity, but the evidence of nepotism and shady contracting was too strong to ignore. His daughter, daughter-in-law, nephew, and even his son's company were all connected to union money. About $4,800,000 went to his family or their firms. The report said he crossed the line on fiduciary duties, and let's just say, the player reps weren't thrilled. Hunter tried to calm the storm by firing his family members, cutting ties with his son's firm, and rolling out a shiny new anti-nepotism policy. But it was too late. The trust was already gone. He got placed on leave on February 1st, and by February 16th, every player rep voted to kick him out. Every single one. Then came the lawsuit. Hunter sued the union and Derek Fisher for $10,500,000. Most of it got tossed by early 2014. But the aftermath wasn't all messy. In July 2014, Michelle Roberts stepped in as the new executive director, the first woman ever to lead a major professional sports players union. John Vesely's contract dispute. Jan Vesely's jump to the NBA wasn't exactly smooth sailing. Back in April 2008, he signed a multi-year deal with Partizan Belgrade that didn't include the usual buyout clause. That tiny omission turned into a massive problem when NBA teams started circling. Partizan had full control over when and how Vesely could leave. No preset terms meant everything had to be negotiated from scratch. When Washington picked him 6th overall in 2011, they didn't just get a player, they got a headache. European clubs, including Barcelona, were also in the mix, and nobody could move forward until Partizan named their price. But since no fixed number was written into the contract, every side pushed for different outcomes, dragging out the process. By late 2011, it got so tangled that the disagreement over the buyout amount triggered formal arbitration. The details weren't public, but it was clear that Partizan wanted more than the NBA side was willing to pay. FIBA's arbitration process finally led to a resolution that didn't leave either side too bitter, which was a miracle on its own. By early 2012, Vesely officially signed with Washington and made his NBA debut that same season. The Wizards managed to secure his rights without breaking the bank, and Vesely avoided coughing up money himself. The whole ordeal showed how missing one clause can freeze a career in place. No preset buyout meant everything was open-ended, and it nearly cost Vesely his shot. Arbitration cleared the way and gave everyone just enough of what they wanted to move on. Daryl Morey's China tweet fallout. On October 4th, 2019, Daryl Morey lit the fuse with a single image on social media, one that said "Fight for freedom, stand with Hong Kong," and just like that, the firestorm began. Chinese broadcasters, sponsors, and even the Chinese Basketball Association, led by Yao Ming, cut ties with the Rockets and suspended NBA coverage. That one post turned into a diplomatic and financial mess overnight. The NBA quickly called the tweet regrettable, hoping to cool things down, while stressing that it wasn't their official stance. Morey apologized too, saying he never meant to upset fans in China. But the backlash wasn't just overseas. In the United States, lawmakers from both major parties accused the NBA of caving to China for money. They argued that a league known for supporting domestic activism looked hypocritical when global profits were involved. NBA Commissioner Adam Silver stepped in to defend Morey's right to speak freely. He also made it clear that while the league wouldn't censor its people, Chinese businesses were free to react. It was a delicate balancing act between American free speech and the NBA's massive Chinese market. The controversy even got a pop culture moment when a South Park episode called Banned in China aired just 2 days earlier. It mocked how entertainment and sports companies bend their values to stay in China's good graces. In the end, the NBA tried walking a tightrope between protecting expression and protecting its global brand. It wasn't clean, and it definitely wasn't quiet, but it exposed the complicated reality of mixing business with international politics. LeBron James, June 7th, 2011, Game 4 of the Finals. That's the day everything fell apart. Miami had the edge in the series, 2-1, and they had a shot to grab the momentum. But that night turned into one of the strangest, most disappointing moments of LeBron's entire career. He played 46 minutes and somehow only scored 8 points. 8, that's not a typo. He shot 3 for 11, missed all his threes, and went 2 for 4 at the line. The Mavericks locked him down with a combo of Jason Kidd, Jason Terry, and Deshaun Stevenson. He actually went 0 for 6 when guarded by Kidd or Terry. Dallas didn't just win the game 86-83, they also broke Miami's rhythm. LeBron was quiet in the fourth, scoring only 2 points. Meanwhile, D. Wade was carrying the scoring load with over 26 per game. Across the whole series, LeBron averaged just 17.8 with 4 turnovers a night. That's not superstar level. He said himself that he played like trash, and he's not wrong. That performance is still the lowest playoff scoring game of his career. Michael Jordan, his ties back to his father, James Jordan, July 23rd, 1993, just past 2 in the morning. James pulled over near Lumberton, North Carolina, tired after a long drive back from a funeral. He parked his red Lexus, the one with UNC's 0023 on the plate, to rest. That car caught the attention of 2 local 18-year-olds, Daniel Green and Larry Demery. They planned to rob him. What happened next changed everything. According to testimony, James woke up, panicked them, and Green shot him once in the chest. His body was dumped in a swamp about 30 miles away. It was discovered 11 days later, badly decomposed. His car was found abandoned with the window smashed and plate removed. They used his car phone to make 36 calls, which led to their arrests on August 15th. The case blew up when authorities realized he was Michael Jordan's father. DeMary took a plea deal, Green went to trial, and got life. Years later, controversy still surrounds it. A judge who sentenced Green now says evidence was withheld. Green's parole was denied again in 2024. The impact on Michael? Devastating. He retired just months later, walking away after 3 straight titles. He moved on to play baseball in honor of his father. Rest in peace. James Jordan, Kevin Durant, June 10, 2019, Game 5 of the Finals. Durant had missed 9 games with a calf strain, but the Warriors needed him. He came out hot, dropping 11 points in just 12 minutes, perfect from 3 and looking sharp. Then, with just under 10 minutes left in the second quarter, everything snapped, literally. As he tried to drive past Serge Ibaka, Durant's Achilles gave out. He hit the floor, grabbed his lower leg, and the arena went silent. Trainers helped him off as teammates stood stunned. He left the building on crutches. The mood completely shifted. After the game, Bob Myers struggled to hold back tears, saying if anyone had to be blamed, it was him. The Warriors won that night, 106-105, but everyone knew the cost. Durant had ruptured his Achilles and would miss the entire next season. He eventually signed with Brooklyn, but didn't return to the court until the 2020-2021 season. He later said it took 700 days to feel like himself again. Achilles injuries have ended careers. For Durant, it changed the Warriors dynasty and rewrote his own path. If you enjoyed this, I'm going to be posting a lot here. I would greatly appreciate it if you could subscribe. Thanks for watching. Derrick Rose, February 24th, 2015. The Bulls announced he'd retorn the medial meniscus in his right knee, the same knee he injured in 2013. No big collision, no dramatic fall, just soreness at practice. Then an MRI, then the news. Rose had already been through so much by then. Torn ACL in 2012, meniscus tear the next year. By this point, he'd played only 61 of 246 regular season games since the ACL injury. That's 25%. On February 27th, Rose had another meniscectomy. 4 to 6 weeks, they said. He made it back in April, but it was different. His game had shifted. He wore a brace, drove less, and leaned on mid-range jumpers. Before the injury, he averaged over 25 points in his MVP season. That year, 18 points, under 41% shooting. He missed 20 games, then helped Chicago pass Milwaukee in the playoff. But against Cleveland, his quickness just wasn't there. The spark was fading. Fans were gutted. The hometown hero crushed by his own knees. Rose kept fighting, but that re-tear sealed it. His transformation from MVP to something else entirely. Chris Paul, July 20th, 2021, the heartbreak was undeniable. After 16 seasons, countless playoff exits, and a resume full of close calls, Paul finally made it to the NBA Finals with Phoenix. They jumped out to a 2-0 lead over Milwaukee, and it looked like the storybook ending was coming. Then the Bucks won 4 straight. Paul played well across the series, averaging nearly 22 points and 8 assists on 55% shooting. He even shot over 52% from 3, but mistakes crept in. In Game 4, he turned the ball over 5 times, including one brutal giveaway late in the 4th. Milwaukee capitalized and took the win. Game 5, Devin Booker got stripped, and Giannis threw down a game-sealing alley-oop. In Game 6, Paul tried to rally the Suns with 26 points, but they still lost 105-98. Giannis dropped 50 that night, putting an exclamation point on the Bucks' comeback. For Paul, it was a crushing loss after coming so close. He didn't walk away though. After the game, he said he'd be back, still fighting, still chasing the one thing his career's missing, a ring. Larry Bird. Summer of 1988 was the beginning of the physical unraveling. After nearly a decade of carrying the Celtics, he couldn't even stand without pain. Heel spurs in both feet, stabbing every time he moved. Doctors confirmed the damage and scheduled surgery. In August, Bird had bones shaved off both heels in Boston. Recovery, 3 to 4 months. But the pain stuck around. He tried returning in November, played 6 games, and shut it down. His feet weren't right. And the back, that was starting to go too. Years of wear, and then the gravel shoveling stunt in 1985, it all caught up. The 1987-88 season had already been rough. He averaged nearly 30 points, but limped through the playoffs. After the surgery, he missed 76 games the next year. He never fully recovered. His numbers dipped, minutes fell, the vertical vanished. He was still smart, still skilled, but physically, the decline was obvious. Cortisone, braces, hyperbaric chambers, nothing brought back the old Bird. By 1992, he retired. 3 titles, 3 MVPs. But the last 4 years were a war with his body. And in that war, the summer of '88 fired the first major shot. Isaiah Thomas. May 19th, 2017, the Celtics announced he was done for the playoff. A torn labrum in his right hip ended a postseason that had already become the stuff of legend. Less than 5 weeks earlier, his sister passed in a car crash. He still suited up and dropped 33 against Chicago, then 53 on what would have been her birthday. But by Game 2 of the East Finals, he couldn't go anymore. The injury, ephemeral acetabular impingement with a labral tear, and it wasn't new. He first felt it back in March. Still, he'd carried Boston to the number 1 seed, put up nearly 29 points per game, and finished 5th in MVP voting. Then came the trade. On August 22nd, Boston sent him to Cleveland for Kyrie. Once Cleveland saw the hip, concerns exploded. Boston had to toss in a second-round pick just to seal the deal. When Thomas finally debuted in January, he wasn't the same. 14 points a night, under 37% shooting. A month later, he was traded again. From there, he bounced around the league, chasing a chance to prove he wasn't finished. But the hip had already taken that from him. Steph Curry, June 16th, 2016, Game 7 of the Finals. And the collapse was complete. Golden State, fresh off a 73-win season, blew a 3-1 lead to Cleveland. The final blow came at Oracle Arena, in front of a stunned home crowd. Curry, 17 points on 6 for 19 shooting. He missed 10 of his 14 threes. In the fourth quarter, he went 2 for 9, and with under 2 minutes left, trailing by 2, he threw a wild, behind-the-back pass out of bounds. Kyrie hit the game winner right over him seconds later. That turnover? Brutal. The Warriors didn't score again. Curry's MCL sprain from April had lingered, but he refused to use it as an excuse. Still, the explosiveness was gone. His drives dropped, his dunks disappeared, and the MVP, unanimous that year, came up short. LeBron James was everywhere, posting a triple-double and grabbing the Finals MVP. Kyrie dropped 26, including that dagger 3. Curry's performance, especially that Game 7, led to questions about his clutch gene. Fans lit him up online, but the sting didn't end there. The loss triggered the Durant signing, and a very different version of the Warriors was born, Kobe Bryant. April 12th, 2013, his body finally gave out. The Lakers were in a desperate playoff push, and Bryant had been playing nearly 39 minutes a night. At 34 years old, in year 17, he was carrying the team on worn-out legs. That night against Golden State, with just over 3 minutes left, he made a move and suddenly stopped. No contact. Just pain. His left Achilles had torn, but instead of collapsing or limping off, he stayed in the game, walked to the line, and calmly sank both free throws to tie it at 109. Then he walked off, unassisted. Surgery came the next day, 6 to 9 months of rehab. He returned in December, but the damage was done. Over the next 3 seasons, he fractured his knee, tore his rotator cuff, and never regained that same form. Before the injury, he was still dominating. That night, he'd already scored 34, but the Achilles tear was the turning point, the start of the final act. His brilliance didn't disappear, but it came in flashes, not runs. That moment, though, those 2 free throws, became the symbol of his legacy. Relentless. Magic Johnson. November 7th, 1991, the sports world stopped. At just 32, Magic held a press conference at the Forum and told the world he had tested positive for HIV. Effective immediately, he was retiring from basketball. The news hit like a thunderclap. 5 titles, 3 MVPs, and he was still at the top. The diagnosis came during a routine insurance physical. Multiple tests confirmed it, and with fears of on-court transmission and no league protocol in place, Magic stepped away. He stood beside his wife Cookie, teammates, and doctors as he made the announcement, saying he'd contracted it through heterosexual contact. His words, "I will have to retire from the Lakers today," echoed across the globe. The reaction was massive, headlines everywhere. Viewership hit 200 million worldwide. Teammates were stunned. Fans mourned like it was a funeral, but Magic didn't disappear. He played in the All-Star game, won MVP, and later joined the Dream Team in Barcelona. He tried comebacks, but the fear among players lingered. Still, he shifted gears, becoming a billionaire entrepreneur, HIV advocate, and face of hope. That day ended his NBA run, but began something even bigger. James Harden, May 28, 2018, Game 7 against the Warriors, and everything fell apart. The Rockets were up 3-2 in the series, but Chris Paul was out with a hamstring injury. That left Harden to carry it all, and for a while, it looked like he might. He scored 32 points, added 6 boards, 6 assists, and 4 steals. But the real story was the shooting. Harden went 2 for 13 from deep. The Rockets as a team missed 27 straight threes, the worst cold streak in playoff history. They finished 7 for 44 from beyond the arc, just under 16%. That stretch, from the second quarter into the fourth, let the Warriors erase a 15-point lead and flip the game. Golden State won 101-92. Harden had 5 turnovers and a -13 plus-minus. Houston had the best regular season record in the league home court advantage, and a real shot at taking down the champs. Instead, they crumbled. The loss became a permanent stain on Harden's playoff resume. A night where everything was lined up and nothing fell, not even the shots. Kawhi Leonard, May 22nd, 2017, Game 1 of the Western Conference Finals, and everything changed. The Spurs were rolling, up 78-55 in the third, and Leonard was torching Golden State. 26 points in just 26 minutes. Then he went up for a shot, came down on Zaza's foot, and his ankle folded. It wasn't new. He'd sprained it earlier that month, but this time, it was bad. He limped off, didn't return, and the Spurs collapsed. The Warriors outscored them 58-33 the rest of the way. Curry and Durant turned it on. The Spurs missed their last 5 shots. Final score, 113-111. Leonard missed the rest of the series. The Spurs never recovered. They got swept, and the series went from competitive to over the second he left. That injury wasn't just a game changer, it fractured Leonard's trust in the team. He got second opinions, clashed with the medical staff, barely played the next season, then asked out. It all started with that one step, one awkward landing, and everything after looked different. Career, franchise, legacy. Damian Lillard, September 27th, 2023. Portland finally pulled the trigger. After 11 seasons, 7 All-Star selections, and 0 championship banners, Lillard was traded to the Milwaukee Bucks. Not Miami, where he wanted to go, Milwaukee. The deal? A 3-team shuffle. The Bucks got Lillard. The Trailblazers got Drew Holiday, DeAndre Ayton, Kamara, and some draft pick lifelines. Phoenix grabbed Nurkic, Grayson Allen, Nasser Little, and Keon Johnson. Lillard had carried Portland for over a decade, becoming their all-time leading scorer, dropping iconic playoff shots, and sticking around through rebuilds, injuries, and chaos. But the loyalty chapter ended. This wasn't mutual, it was business. Portland passed on his Miami wish list and shipped him somewhere colder with a better title shot. On social media, he aimed his words at real fans, not the casuals, and teased that more was coming. For Milwaukee, the pairing of Lillard and Giannis instantly changed the East. For Lillard, it was a new mission, title or bust. Portland, they hit reset. And just like that, the Dame era was over. A quiet superstar, traded loud. A legacy shifted from loyalty to a late career gamble. DeMarcus Cousins, January 26th, 2018. The night his rise crashed in real time. The Pelicans were up 1 with 15 seconds left against Houston, and Cousins, already with a triple-double, chased a rebound after a missed free throw. He lunged, planted, and the left Achilles gave out. Just like that, he collapsed, grabbing the back of his leg, and everyone knew it was the worst-case scenario. A complete rupture, no contact, no foul, just physics. He was 27, averaging 25 points, 13 boards, and 5 assists. A force of nature with size, skill, and vision. This was supposed to be his payday year, set for a max contract in July. Instead, he had surgery, missed the rest of the season, and never got that deal. The Pelicans made the playoffs, even swept Portland. But without Cousins, the ceiling was gone. Cousins had said himself he thought the Pelicans had a real chance to win it all this year with him and Anthony Davis. He came back a year later with the Warriors on a cheap 1-year deal. Looked okay, then tore his quad, then his ACL. By 2025, he'd bounced through 6 teams, played overseas, and never sniffed an all-star nod again. That injury stole his prime and shredded his market. A franchise star turned basketball nomad. D. Wade, July 6th, 2016, he said goodbye to Miami after 13 seasons and 3 titles, signing a 2-year, $47 million deal with the Bulls. Not exactly your feel-good homecoming story. This was less about basketball and more about pride. Wade had already taken pay cuts to help Miami chase rings. And now, when it was time for them to return the favor, the Heat started penny pinching. First, they offered $20 million, then $40. Still not enough. Wade watched the team chase Kevin Durant and give Whiteside a fat contract while he waited. That didn't sit right. It was like waiting for your family to pick you up after school and watching them drive right past. Pat Riley, cold-blooded executive extraordinaire, never even called. Just a text that said, "Sad, yes," all caps, and way too many Ds. Wade said he loved Pat, but also admitted, that sucks. And he wasn't wrong. Signing with Chicago wasn't just a business move. It was a dream Wade had since he was a kid in Robbins, watching the Bulls dominate the 90s. But no matter how hometown it looked, everyone knew the truth. Miami let him walk. And that hurt more than anything in the box score. Steve Nash. The night of October 31st, 2012 didn't just bruise Steve Nash's shin. It blew up his entire Lakers chapter. The guy collided with a rookie, took a shot to the leg, and boom, fractured fibula. Everyone thought he'd be out for a week or two. Instead, it spiraled. Doctors found nerve damage, and that triggered more problems than anyone saw coming. Nash developed sciatica, lost calf strength, and limped through 50 games that season. And the stats? Way below his prime. He'd been putting up over 14 points and 8 assists a game for years. After that, not even close. His drives vanished. He turned into a spot-up shooter. Defenders lit him up. Even standing became a chore. The guy needed custom orthotics, nerve therapy, even epidural injections just to stay upright. And don't forget, this was a 2-time MVP, the engine of those Phoenix teams. But with the Lakers, he played just 65 games out of 246. That's 26%. And while the Lakers sunk, he just kept fighting to walk right. By 2015, the pain won. He retired. No ring, no playoff wins. Just chronic pain, broken dreams, and a what if hanging over everything. Chris Bosh, his final game came on February 9th, 2016, with 18 points against San Antonio, but nobody knew that'd be the last time he touched the floor in uniform. Not long after, doctors found a blood clot in his calf. The kicker? That wasn't even the first time. The year before, one traveled to his lungs and nearly ended more than just his career. This time, it was caught early, but still dangerous enough to shut him down for the rest of the season. Bosh wanted to play, badly. He kept showing up to practice, cheering during games, pushing for a return, but the Heat weren't budging. They refused to clear him, and by May, both sides dropped a joint statement confirming he'd sit out the playoff. By September, he failed his physical, and Pat Riley basically said it was over. That was it. The guy went from cornerstone to cautionary tale. The league ruled it a career-ending condition in June 2017, and the Heat waived him in July. His retirement came in 2019, and Miami retired his jersey 2 months later. One of the best big men of his era, gone too soon because of something no jumper or workout could fix. Carmelo Anthony. On April 14th, 2017, Phil Jackson basically hit send on the weirdest breakup text in NBA history, except it was a press conference. He said Anthony would be better off somewhere else, tossing gasoline on a fire that had been smoldering for months. That comment wasn't some slip-up. Jackson had been needling him publicly for a while. Back in February, he quoted a Bleacher Report article criticizing Anthony and threw in a leopard joke, implying Carmelo couldn't or wouldn't change. The issue? Anthony had a no-trade clause. He wasn't just walking out the door because Jackson got passive-aggressive, so things got awkward fast. Jackson doubled down in June, saying the team wasn't built for Anthony's success and throwing shade at their title chances. At this point, it was a staring contest, and the only thing more uncomfortable than the press quotes was the Instagram post Anthony fired back. Really? #stay mellow. Eventually, something had to give. Jackson was out by the end of June, and Anthony was traded to Oklahoma City in September. It was a messy, public saga that showed how fast things fall apart when communication breaks down and the front office forgets how to manage a star. John Wall, on December 27, 2018, he wasn't on the court or in the gym. He was at home recovering from heel surgery when everything collapsed. Literally, a slip turned into a complete Achilles rupture. And just like that, Wall's career trajectory was wrecked. The Wizards didn't even announce it until February. Pain and swelling led to a scan, and the MRI confirmed what nobody wanted to hear. He had just gone under the knife the day before to fix a heel problem. And then this? Unreal. The Achilles snapped, and the recovery was brutal. Infection delayed everything, and rehab became a nightmare. He was supposed to miss weeks, not years. Instead, Wall sat for over 700 days. No games in 2019. None in 2020. When he finally came back in Houston, he still had game. 20 points per night, but the burst was gone. His contract, $170 million with $80 guaranteed. It became dead weight. The Wizards traded him. The Rockets sat him. The Clippers waived him. And the league moved on, from 5-time All-Star to unsigned by 25. That injury didn't just end a season, it closed the book on his prime. Dirk Nowitzki, May 3rd, 2007, was supposed to be part of a deep playoff run for Dallas. Not a basketball autopsy. The Mavericks had just finished a ridiculous 67-15 regular season and somehow got bounced by the 8th-seeded Warriors in 6 games. It was historic, but for all the wrong reasons. No one seed had ever lost like that in a best-of-7 series. And Dirk, he had one of the worst games of his career when it mattered most. He logged 38 minutes and change, put up 8 points, and bricked 11 of his 13 shots. He missed all 6 of his 3-point tries and didn't hit a single field goal in the second half. Meanwhile, the Warriors lit it up, especially Steven Jackson, who couldn't miss from deep. The final score was 111-86, but the loss felt even heavier. Then came the MVP award. Dirk won it, deservedly too. 24 points a game, elite shooting, led a dominant team, but instead of a big celebration, the ceremony happened in silence at the American Airlines Center almost 2 weeks after the loss. The timing was brutal. That trophy felt like salt on a still open wound. Penny Hardaway, May 12, 1997, he dropped back-to-back 40-point playoff games, trying to drag the Magic past the Heat. He became the first player ever to score 40 or more in 2 straight playoff games, while his team didn't even crack 100. But despite the heroics, they lost the series, and the shadow of Shaq's departure hung over everything. That loss put all the weight on Penny, and the cost of carrying it showed up fast. By November 9th, Penny's left knee was already waving red flags. He played through pain at first, but things got worse quick. By December, he was on the injured list. Doctors found a cartilage tear, and he had surgery on December 10th. It was supposed to be minor, but it triggered years of knee issues. Dr. James Andrews later said the damage was deeper than they thought. Articular cartilage, the kind that doesn't heal well. Penny made the All-Star game that season, but played just 19 games total. The long-term effect? Devastating. Multiple surgeries followed, including a microfracture that he'd later regret. That one killed his explosiveness. From rising star to role player, Penny's arc changed forever. His career kept going, but the magic was gone. Ben Simmons, June 20th, 2021, Game 7 against Atlanta. The Sixers were down by 2 with under 4 minutes left. Simmons got the ball under the basket. A clear dunk, no defenders in sight. And instead of finishing, he passed it off to Thibault, who got fouled and hit one of 2 free throws. That play didn't just cost them momentum, it became the symbol of everything critics were saying about Simmons: passive, hesitant, and scared to shoot when it mattered most. Philly lost that game 103-96. And over the series, Simmons averaged just under 10 points, missed 30 free throws, and basically vanished in fourth quarters. In 5 out of 7 games, he didn't take a single shot during crunch time. Not one. That's your starting point guard. Afterward, Doc Rivers was asked if Simmons could be the guy to lead a championship team. He said he didn't know. Joel Embiid pointed directly at the passed-up dunk. That summer, Simmons wanted out. He skipped training camp, citing mental health struggles, and eventually got traded to Brooklyn. But between injuries and setbacks, he barely played. By 2025, he was waived. One play started it all. DeMar, July 18, 2018. The Raptors hit send on one of the coldest texts in franchise history, except this time, it was a full-blown trade. After 9 seasons, DeMar and a protected first-rounder were shipped to San Antonio for Kawhi Leonard and Danny Green. This wasn't just about names on paper. DeMar was the Raptors' all-time leading scorer, a 4-time All-Star, and the face of the team. What made it sting more? He'd just been told he wasn't getting traded. His response came fast. Be told one thing and the outcome another. Can't trust him. That wasn't just disappointment, that was betrayal. The business side showed up in a suit and kicked loyalty out the back door. Then, the plot twist. Kawhi led the Raptors to a title that same season. Finals MVP, championship parade, legacy secured. Meanwhile, DeMar and the Spurs bowed out in round 1, but DeMar didn't flinch. Later, he said he believed the Raptors would have won it all with him too. Whether you agree or not, the trade changed everything. Toronto got a ring, but lost a cornerstone. DeMar got blindsided and learned the hard way that loyalty doesn't always make the cut in pro basketball. Brandon Roy, December 9th, 2011, he walked away from the NBA at just 27 years old. Not because he wanted to, but because his knees gave him no choice. The guy had no cartilage left, just bone grinding on bone. Every step hurt, every jump was a risk, and it wasn't from lack of effort. He had surgeries, rehab, all of it. But the damage couldn't be undone. The season before, in 2010, he had procedures on both knees. Still, he gave Portland one more flash of brilliance. 18 points in the fourth quarter of a comeback win in the playoffs. It was vintage Roy, but that spark couldn't carry him through the pain. The team used the amnesty clause, wiped his contract off the books, and he still got the $63 million owed to him. Then came the brief comeback. Roy signed with Minnesota in 2012, tried platelet-rich plasma therapy, and gave it a shot. 5 games, 1 more surgery, and it was over for good. Post-retirement, he pivoted fast, became a high school coach in Seattle. Undefeated season, National Coach of the Year. His playing career ended too soon, but his influence still going strong. Joel Embiid, May 12, 2019. The Sixers were seconds away from forcing overtime in Game 7 against Toronto. The score was tied, tension through the roof, and Kawhi Leonard caught the inbound. He dribbled to the corner, launched a fadeaway over Embiid's fully extended arm, and the ball hit the rim. Once, twice, 3 times, then a 4th, and finally, it dropped, 92-90. Just like that, the Sixers were out. It was the first Game 7 buzzer beater in NBA playoff history. Not exactly the side of history you want to be on. Embiid had chased Leonard to the corner, did everything right on the contest, and still watched the ball fall. His reaction said it all. He left the court in tears. Completely gutted, Raptors center Marc Gasol walked over and consoled him as the arena exploded. That shot didn't just end the Sixers season, it carved a permanent place in Embiid's legacy. He'd fought through injury that postseason and gave everything in that series, but the bounce wasn't his. It became a brutal turning point for Philly and a lasting image of Embiid's heartbreak. A superstar watching history happen at his own expense. Ricky Rubio, March 9, 2012. The Timberwolves were finally turning heads, sitting just above 500, with real playoff hopes for the first time in years. Rubio was electric. 10 points, 8 assists, over 2 steals a game, and everything in Minnesota felt alive again. Then came the Lakers game. Late fourth quarter, Rubio slid to defend Kobe Bryant, planted wrong, and his left knee crumpled. Just like that, it was over. The next day, the MRI confirmed a torn ACL and LCL. Done for the season. Done for the Olympics. The buzz around Minnesota died immediately. The Wolves, 21-20 before the injury, lost 20 of their last 25 games and missed the playoffs. Again, Rubio had brought flair, ball movement, actual excitement. Without him, it unraveled. He had surgery on March 21st, then disappeared into rehab for 9 months. When he returned on December 15th, fans got a glimpse of what they'd missed. 18 minutes, 8 points, 9 assists, 4 boards, 3 steals. He was rusty, but still himself. That injury didn't just knock out a rookie year, it derailed one of the most promising turnarounds the Timberwolves had seen in years. All it took was one bad step. Charles Barkley, June 20th, 1993. He was at the peak of his powers, MVP trophy in hand, leading a 62-win Phoenix team into a heavyweight final showdown with Michael Jordan and the Bulls. Barkley didn't just show up, he went off. 27 points, 13 rebounds, over 5 assists a game across 6 brutal matchups. But it still wasn't enough. Game 6 in Phoenix, the Suns had clawed out a late 4-point lead. Everything was lining up. Then John Paxson buried a wide-open 3 with under 4 seconds left to flip the score. On the Suns' last chance, Horace Grant blocked Kevin Johnson. That was it. 99-98. Chicago's third title. Barkley's best shot gone. He'd carried that team, fought through Jordan's relentless onslaught, and nearly pulled off a miracle. Jordan averaged 41 a game, still the highest in finals history. Barkley did everything right, and it still slipped away. Years later, Barkley admitted the pain never left. He said he couldn't sleep, couldn't shake it. That moment didn't just end the series, it burned itself into his legacy. The MVP without a ring, a titan standing inches from glory, watching it fall apart in front of a home crowd. Rudy Gobert. March 9th, 2020. He thought he was being funny. At a media session, he leaned over and tapped every microphone and recorder on the table, joking about the league's new COVID restrictions. Just a little mockery of the locker room protocols, right? 2 days later, he tested positive for the virus. The NBA shut down that night. It was chaos. The Jazz were seconds from tip-off in Oklahoma City when word came through. Game canceled. Fans sent home. Then the league suspended the season indefinitely. And that mic stunt, it exploded online. What was supposed to be a joke turned into the face of a pandemic shutdown. Teammates weren't thrilled, especially Donovan Mitchell, who also tested positive. Reports came out about tension in the locker room. Trust got tested. Gobert apologized quickly, called his actions thoughtless, and admitted he put people at risk. The league used his diagnosis as a wake-up call, and everything changed from that moment on. That clip of him touching the mics wasn't just awkward, it became a symbol. One gesture, one virus, one massive pause. Gobert didn't just stop a game, he stopped the entire league with one of the worst timed jokes in sports history. Jason Tatum, May 12, 2025. Madison Square Garden was packed, and Tatum was cooking. 42 points, 8 boards, 4 assists, 4 steals, 2 blocks. He was dragging the Celtics through Game 4 like a man possessed. Then, it happened. Late in the fourth, chasing down a loose ball, he planted his right foot and crumbled to the floor. No contact, just pain. He clutched his leg, couldn't stand, and was taken off in a wheelchair. The energy drained from the court. The next day, the MRI confirmed the worst. Ruptured right Achilles. Surgery followed immediately. Recovery, 9 to 12 months minimum. Just like that, Boston's playoff run cracked, and their franchise player was gone for the entire next season. The Celtics managed to bounce back in Game 5 with a blowout win, but it didn't last. They were crushed in Game 6, ending their postseason and throwing their future into question. Tatum had tied Larry Bird and John Havlicek with his 5th 40-point playoff game. But that stat felt irrelevant next to the rehab timeline. It wasn't just a bad night, it was a franchise-altering moment. One wrong step changed everything for Boston's leader, Julius Randle. January 27th, 2024. The Knicks were locked in a battle with Miami when everything went sideways. In the fourth quarter, Randle drove to the basket, absorbed contact, and hit the floor hard, right shoulder first. He got up holding it, but it was clear something was wrong. The diagnosis? Dislocated shoulder. He was done for the night, and as it turned out, for the season. At the time, he was putting up 24 points, over 9 rebounds, and 5 assists per game. The Knicks were rolling, especially with OG in the mix. When those two played together, the Knicks were 12-2 with the best defense in the league. The plan was rehab, avoid surgery, and get him back before the playoffs. That plan didn't last. On April 4th, the Knicks announced he'd need season-ending surgery. The shoulder wasn't stable enough. No more comeback. He watched from the sidelines as the team pushed through Philly, but got bounced by Indiana in 7. Then came the final twist. Randle got traded to the Timberwolves in the offseason. That shoulder injury, it ended his season, his playoff hopes, and his time in New York, all in one blow. Karl Malone's 1997 MVP. It's the kind of moment that makes basketball purists do a double take. The league handed the MVP to Karl Malone that year, and not Michael Jordan. And somehow the universe didn't collapse. But this wasn't just about a trophy. This was about a villain walking off with the crown, while the king was still dominating the realm. Let's start with Malone himself. The guy wasn't exactly a fan favorite. Sure, he was a beast on the court, but there was always that edge. Elbows, body checks, screens that felt more like hit and runs. He didn't finesse his way through the paint. He bulldozed, add in the off-court baggage that followed him, and he had a reputation that made people flinch when his name popped up in MVP talks. And then there's Jordan. At 34, the man was still torching defenders like it was nothing. He led the league in scoring, again, and dragged a beat-up Bulls roster to 69 wins. Meanwhile, Malone's Jazz won 64. Impressive, yes, but not groundbreaking. Chicago fought through injuries in a tougher Eastern Conference. They still had the better record, and Jordan still had the better stats. The numbers? Jordan had the edge in scoring, steals, win shares, efficiency, you name it. Malone grabbed more rebounds and shot better from the field. Sure, but that's what you expect from a power forward who rarely took a shot more than 5 feet from the rim. Jordan was working from the perimeter, drawing double teams, and still filling it up. The voting? Absurdly close. Malone got 63 first-place votes. Jordan got 52. The final point difference was 29. That's practically a coin flip that went the wrong way. And it wasn't because Malone had the better year, it was because voters got bored. Jordan fatigue is real. He'd already won 4 MVPs. Apparently, that meant it was someone else's turn. Good logic if you're handing out party favors, not if you're recognizing the most valuable player on earth. What made it worse? The finals. Because if anyone needed a reality check, Jordan delivered one. He dropped 32 points a game in that series, including that infamous food poisoning performance where he looked like a zombie and still put up 38. Meanwhile, Malone clanked crucial free throws and got stripped by Jordan in the clutch. So not only did the supposed MVP fizzle when it counted, he literally got outplayed and outmuscled by the guy he beat for the award. And let's be honest, nobody was tuning in to see Malone grind out post-ups. People tuned in for Jordan, always Jordan. He had the stats, the wins, the highlights, and the pressure. Malone had a storyline and a loyal media block. That's it. And when the dust settled, everyone remembered who the real MVP was. And it wasn't the guy who missed 2 free throws in Game 1 and got his pocket picked in Game 6. It was Jordan, the same as it ever was. By the way, if you guys want to subscribe, I'm going to start posting every day. Thanks. Anyways, the 2017 Warriors Championship. This was the moment a team that already broke the league just decided to break the rest of basketball reality. After winning 73 games the year before, the Warriors added Kevin Durant, and suddenly the Avengers had recruited Thanos. The reaction? Not shock. Rage. This wasn't just stacking the deck. This was flipping the table and building a new one where only one team ever won. Durant's decision was the spark. He'd just blown a 3-1 lead against the Warriors in the Western Conference Finals. Instead of running it back, he joined the team that beat him. People were furious. Thunder fans felt betrayed. Other teams saw the writing on the wall. The Warriors weren't just good anymore. They were impossible. They already had Curry, Thompson, and Green. Now they had Durant. That's 4 all-stars in their prime. And it wasn't just fans whining. Players, media, legends, everyone called it unfair. And guess what? They were right. The Warriors ran through the league like a wrecking ball. 67 wins in the regular season, and then a playoff run so lopsided, it felt like a bad video game simulation. 16 wins, 1 loss. That's it. They swept the Trailblazers, Jazz, and Spurs. Then they dismantled Cleveland in 5 games. Their net rating in the playoffs was plus 16.8, the highest ever at the time. They weren't playing basketball. They were demonstrating it. Now Durant wasn't just along for the ride. He led the team in scoring during the finals with 35 a game, shooting over 55%. He hit threes, blocked shots, and did everything people said he couldn't do in Oklahoma City. He got finals MVP, and no one could argue. But no one was clapping either. It felt inevitable. It felt scripted. And that's what made it villainous. Meanwhile, LeBron James was doing superhero things on the other side. 33 points, 12 boards, 10 assists per game in the finals. A triple-double average. He dropped 41 in Game 5 and still lost. It didn't matter what Cleveland did, it wasn't enough. Kyrie was great, Love was solid, but the Warriors had too many weapons. The series was over before it even started. What made it worse was that Durant's decision was only possible because of a weird cap spike. The Warriors could afford him without losing their core, so they didn't just beat the system, they gamed it. Fans said it ruined the league, ratings dropped. People tuned out, already knowing the ending. And when the ending came, there was no twist. Just Durant, holding a trophy he earned on a team no one could match. So yeah, the 2017 Warriors were incredible. Beautiful basketball, unselfish play, historic efficiency. But let's not pretend everyone loved it. They won like villains. And when villains win, even if they dominate, it leaves a bad taste. This wasn't a Cinderella story. This was a steamroller dressed in gold. Rudy Gobert's 2024 Defensive Player of the Year. The league looked at a rookie phenom, changing the game on a nightly basis, and said, nah, let's give it to the guy who's done this 3 times already. And just like that, Rudy Gobert walked away with his 4th Defensive Player of the Year award, tying a record, while Victor Wembanyama sat there with all the stats and none of the hardware. Let's be real, Gobert's never been beloved. The guy gets mocked constantly for being a dinosaur on offense, for crying about an all-star snub, and for starting a pandemic press conference with a mic-touching joke that aged like spoiled yogurt. Every time he wins something, it's like the basketball gods are trolling the fans on purpose. And now, even with the Timberwolves dominating on defense, the reaction wasn't applause, it was groaning. Because this wasn't just another trophy for Rudy, this was the league telling Wemby to wait his turn. And a lot of people were done waiting. Wemby wasn't just good, he was myth level. 3.6 blocks per game, 1.2 steals, almost 3 deflections, and an 8-foot wingspan that basically made every possession a gamble for the offense. He even had a 5x5 game against the Lakers and nearly a quadruple-double against the Nuggets, all on a team that won 22 games. And that's the problem. He played for the Spurs. They couldn't guard a chair without him. So even though his impact was off the charts, the voters went with the guy on a winning team. Now Gobert wasn't slacking. He averaged over 12 rebounds, led the league in contested shots, and helped Minnesota finish with the best defensive rating in the league. But here's the thing, when he sat, Minnesota's defense didn't collapse. Naz Reid, Jaden McDaniels, and others held it down. And in Game 2 of the second round, when Rudy missed the game for his kid's birth, they still held Denver to 101 points. That's not exactly proof of a guy carrying the whole system. Meanwhile, Wemby was dragging the Spurs defense out of the dumpster. When he was on the court, they were a top 5 unit. When he sat, they were back to being a disaster. His plus 3.2 defensive, estimated plus-minus ranked in the 99th percentile. That's absurd. He blocked over 90 more shots than Gobert, doubled his block percentage, and still managed to pick pockets and close out shooters like a guard. And again, he was a rookie. But voters saw the standings, not the tape. 72 of them gave Gobert the top vote. Only 19 picked Wemby. The logic, team success. Gobert's Timberwolves won 56 games. The Spurs, just 22. It didn't matter that Wemby was literally rewriting the geometry of the court. It didn't matter that he made the all-defensive first team in his first year. The narrative was that Rudy had earned it again, and the kid could wait. So yeah, Rudy's got 4 trophies now. Congrats to him. But this one felt different. It felt like a gate being slammed shut just when someone was about to kick it open. The numbers screamed Wemby. The impact was undeniable, but the voters chose the known name over the rising force. And that's how villains win. And you can make this your best season yet with nutritious 2-minute meals from Factor. Personally, I've been using Factor for the past few weeks, and honestly, it's changed everything. No more stressing over what to cook or cleaning up after. Just heat, eat, and go. Especially while watching the playoffs, it makes everything so easy. The shredded chicken taco bowl, fire. The garlic herb salmon, better than anything I've ever made at home. Instead of being stuck in the kitchen, I've been spending more time outside and hitting the gym. And Factor fits right into that routine. And like I said, with the playoffs on too, you don't gotta stress about missing the game. With 45 weekly options, I can switch it up constantly. Whether I'm aiming for high protein or just keeping it light, they've got it all. Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, Keto, even veggie meals. Plus, they've got snacks and desserts that don't ruin your goals. I've been loving their smoothies and those peanut butter energy bites. I'm hooked. So why not savor more this summer? Let Factor take care of the meals so you can enjoy more of everything else. Get started at factormeals.com/modernjam50off and use code modernjam50off to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. That's code modernjam50off at factormeals.com/modernjam50off for 50% off plus free shipping. Thank you, Fact. The 2012 Heat Championship. This one was personal, not just for LeBron, Wade, and Bosh, but for pretty much everyone watching, whether they were hate watching or rage celebrating. When the Miami Heat won it all in 2012, it wasn't just a championship. It was a public declaration that the villains had taken over and nobody could stop them. This whole mess started in 2010 when LeBron James turned free agency into a primetime special and told the world he was taking his talents to South Beach. That 9-minute flex had nearly 10 million people watching, and about half of them were busy lighting Cleveland jerseys on fire in their backyard. And let's not forget the infamous pep rally where LeBron promised not one, not 2 rings. Fast forward to 2012, and the Heat were exactly what people feared, a super team built to bully the league. They had LeBron, a 2-time MVP already, D. Wade, the hero of the 2006 finals, and Chris Bosh, a perennial all-star. This wasn't a team, it was an economic imbalance, wrapped in a jersey. Their opponent, the Oklahoma City Thunder. Young, homegrown, full of potential, and completely unprepared for what was about to happen. Durant, Westbrook, and Harden were all 23 on average. They played like kids who didn't know they weren't supposed to be there yet. America loved them. And then Miami dropped a grown man elbow on their season. Statistically, it wasn't close. LeBron averaged over 27 points, almost 8 rebounds, and over 6 assists per game. He shot 53% from the field and led the league in player efficiency rating at 30.7. That's cartoonish. Wade and Bosh chipped in 22 and 18 points per game, respectively, while also doing work on the defensive end. Their win shares, massive. Their advanced stats, off the charts. It was basketball efficiency in its most robotic form. And it worked. They bulldozed through the playoffs with a 16-7 record. They took down the Knicks, the Pacers, and the Celtics, surviving a 7-game war with Boston, where LeBron dropped 45 and looked like a glitch in reality. Then came the finals. Oklahoma City took Game 1 behind Durant's 36 points, and for a second, it looked like the heroes might pull it off. But then the Heat snapped back with 4 straight wins and reminded everyone why they were the most hated team in the league. LeBron finally got his ring, and for all the talk about redemption and growth, the fans didn't care. This wasn't a feel-good moment. It was the villain getting the crown after 2 seasons of acting like it already belonged to him. The Thunder were cute. The Heat were inevitable. So yeah, LeBron silenced the critics. Wade added another trophy. Bosh laughed awkwardly in every post-game clip, but to the average fan, it felt like the league's final boss just cleared the level, and that's what made it the ultimate villains win moment. Talent, overwhelming hope, power swallowing up potential, and the bad guys celebrating while everyone else just watched. The 2002 Lakers championship. You'd think by year 3, people would be used to it. But nope, when the Lakers completed the three-peat in 2002, sweeping the Nets like they were dust. It wasn't just another ring, it was the league's biggest, loudest, here we go again moment. And not in a charming, underdog makes good way. This was villains winning again and making it look easy. By now, Shaq and Kobe Bryant weren't just stars. They were the final bosses. They'd already ripped through the league in 2 straight finals, and now they were back to do it again with the same formula. Unstoppable force in the paint, cold-blooded killer on the wing, and a roster built to give them space and let them eat. But this time, they weren't just dominant, they were controversial. Let's talk about that Western Conference Finals. The Kings pushed the Lakers to 7 games, and then Game 6 happened. The Lakers shot 27 free throws in the 4th quarter. Sacramento, just 16 all game. The calls were wild, phantom fouls, weird whistles, and a vibe that screamed, no way this ends tonight. And sure, no one ever proved anything. But when a disgraced ref later wrote a book saying the league had influence over games, it didn't help the Lakers' case. So they made it to the finals. And waiting for them, the New Jersey Nets, a team that fought hard all year, made their first finals appearance and found themselves in front of a freight train. Jason Kidd was doing everything, scoring, rebounding, playmaking, but he was out there with duct tape and hope, trying to stop Shaq from dropping 36 a night while shooting nearly 60%. The Lakers were just overwhelming. They won all 4 games, outscored the Nets by double digits on average, and shot over 50% from the field as a team. Shaq got his 3rd straight finals MVP. Kobe quietly dropped almost 27 a night, shooting over 51%. There was no drama, no tension, just inevitability. And that's the thing. This wasn't just dominance. It was that smug, chest-thumping, know it's yours dominance that makes people roll their eyes. The Lakers were in every commercial, every highlight, every conspiracy theory. And after the mess with Sacramento, plenty of people weren't watching the finals to cheer. They were watching to see if anyone could stop the machine. The answer? Nope. Even Lakers fans were split. You had Kobe and Shaq sniping in the media, throwing shade through post-game interviews, but still combining for over 60 points per game like they were connected by Bluetooth. It was dysfunction wrapped in excellence, and nobody could do a thing about it. So when the confetti dropped and the camera zoomed in on yet another purple and gold celebration, it didn't feel like a fairy tale ending. It felt like the bad guys did it again, smiling the whole way. Another title for the dynasty. Another year where the most loaded team won everything, and all anyone else could do was groan. Because in 2002, the villains didn't just win, they didn't even break a sweat. The 2007 Spurs championship. This was the kind of title run that made casual fans fall asleep. When the Spurs swept the Cavaliers in the finals, it wasn't just a win, it was a dynasty, reminding everyone that even when a hero shows up, the house always wins. The Spurs came in like the polite villains of the NBA. They didn't talk trash, they didn't dance, they didn't make decision specials or star in shoe commercials, but they kept winning. This was title number 4 in 8 seasons. Duncan, Parker, and Manu had turned winning into clockwork, and by 2007, people weren't exactly rooting for them. They were just waiting for someone, anyone, to break the cycle. Enter 22-year-old LeBron James. He just dragged a painfully average Cavaliers squad to the finals on sheer willpower and broken dreams. His supporting cast, the second best scorer, averaged fewer than 12 points per game. He dropped 48 in an overtime classic against Detroit just to get Cleveland there. Everyone wanted to believe the impossible could happen, and then the Spurs arrived and made sure it didn't. San Antonio didn't just win, they suffocated. The pace was slow, the defense was brutal, and the ball movement was clean. Tim Duncan anchored everything. 20 points, 10 boards, over 2 blocks a game. Tony Parker sliced up Cleveland's defense and got Finals MVP while barely missing a shot. Manu hit threes, flopped a little, and played his role to perfection. And just like that, the dream was over. The controversy wasn't in any one call or moment, it was in the matchup. Cleveland had no business being there. They weren't ready, they weren't deep, and they weren't talented enough. But because LeBron had dragged them across the finish line, people hoped the finals would be a battle. Instead, it was a beatdown. 4 games, no drama, just veteran killers methodically shutting down the league's new hope. The Spurs held Cleveland under 90 points in all 4 games. LeBron shot just 35% from the field in the series. San Antonio's defense was too smart, too experienced, and too connected. And the worst part, the Spurs made it look easy. That's what really made them villains here. They didn't sweat, they didn't struggle, and they didn't care about the storylines. They saw the hype and shrugged. They saw the chosen one and said, cool, let's double him and rotate. This wasn't personal, this was professional eradication. So yeah, the 2007 Spurs were great, unquestionably. But when you sweep a finals, crush a Cinderella, and make a generational star look ordinary, you don't get to be the hero. You get to be the villain, polished, efficient, and totally unavoidable. And for the fans who wanted to see LeBron carry that ragtag squad to glory, this was the most boring, brutal kind of heartbreak. The kind where the bad guys don't even celebrate loudly. They just win. Again, 1990 Pistons championship. The Detroit Pistons won it all again in 1990, and nobody outside of Michigan was celebrating. This wasn't some magical run. It was the basketball equivalent of being dragged through gravel by a station wagon. That title, their second in a row, felt less like a crowning moment and more like a league-wide punishment. They beat the Portland Trail Blazers 4-1, and it looked exactly like you'd expect. Elbows, fouls, snarls, and very little joy. This team wasn't flashy. They were built on defense, pain tolerance, and a refusal to care what anyone thought. Detroit's numbers say domination, but their style said something else. Their defense was ranked number 1 in the league, and their net rating led everyone. But the league was trying to promote high scoring and highlight reels, not body checks. The Pistons didn't care. They smothered the Blazers, forced bad shots, and slowed the pace down to a crawl. Isaiah Thomas was everywhere. Joe Dumars shot the lights out, and Bill Laimbeer played like every referee owed him money. Clyde Drexler and Portland looked like a fun team from a Nike commercial. Detroit looked like the guys who tackle you at a church picnic. What made it worse for fans was the contrast. The Blazers were young, fast, and full of energy. Their offense was beautiful when it worked, but they got dragged into a street fight they weren't ready for. They shot 44% from the field in the finals, which tells you all you need to know about what it's like trying to score through Lane Beer and Dennis Rodman. Drexler averaged over 26 points, but he shot under 41% doing it. You could practically see the bruises forming. That Pistons roster wasn't built to be loved. It was built to win ugly. Rodman pulled down 12 rebounds a game, Lane Beer added over 10, and their combined physicality made sure Portland never had a clean look. Even Vinnie Johnson got in on the fun with a game-winning shot in the final game. The Pistons didn't just win, they shut down hope. Their coach didn't care about aesthetics. He cared about results, and the results were clear. Portland couldn't handle them. Fans didn't like it. Ratings dipped from the year before, even though the games were competitive. The style was just too hard to watch, unless you had an emotional investment or a deep respect for shoulder checks. The Pistons fouled more than almost anyone, averaging nearly 24 a game in the playoffs. And there were complaints everywhere. Commentators, coaches, fans, they all hated how they played. It didn't help that their dynasty followed the elegant Showtime Lakers and came right before Michael Jordan's Bulls took over. Detroit felt like an interruption, a cold front during spring break. The backlash was real, from media labels like goons and thugs to Barkley outright calling them names on camera. Detroit was cast as the league's bad guys. And unlike most villains, they leaned into it. They didn't care about being hated. They weaponized it. That's part of what makes this a true villain win. They were not just winning in spite of the hate, they were winning because of it. Their back-to-back titles, with that bruising style, made them one of the most controversial champions in league history. That's not an opinion. That's what happens when the villains actually win. 2021 Hawks playoff run. Trae Young turned playoff basketball into his own personal stage show, and he didn't care if the audience booed. In fact, he loved it. What should have been a nice underdog run by a 5th seed turned into a full-blown villain origin story. Young led the Hawks past the Knicks and the Sixers, and along the way, he burned bridges, stared down crowds, and made enemies out of entire cities. Against New York, he wasn't just a problem on the court, he was a menace to the entire vibe of Madison Square Garden. He silenced the place with a floater in Game 1 and then literally shushed the crowd. After the Game 5 win, he bowed to the fans like he just finished a Broadway show. It was less sports, more performance art with a side of petty. Knicks fans, who'd waited 8 long years just to lose in 5, didn't forget. They booed him for years after and cursed his name at Yankees games. Then came Philly, where things got even louder. The Sixers were the #1 seed, with Joel Embiid having an MVP season, and they still blew it. In Game 5, the Hawks came back from down 26. Young dropped 39, walked around like he owned the place, and made sure everyone knew about it. He didn't even shoot well in Game 7, but he made just enough plays and grins to keep Philly fans bitter to this day. That Game 7 win wasn't pretty, but it got the job done, and that's when the villain crown started to fit a little too well. The numbers back it up. Young averaged 28.8 points and 9.5 assists per game during that playoff run. He wasn't efficient from deep, just over 31%, but he hit shots that hurt, big ones, demoralizing ones. He had more flair than anyone else on the floor, and he made sure the camera caught it every time. That bow, that shush, the dice roll celebration years later on the Knicks logo, yeah, those weren't just for the fans, they were for the legacy. And let's talk about defense, or the lack of it. Young was a target. He's 6'1", and every team tried to go at him. Opponents shot nearly 48% when guarded by him, but it didn't matter. He'd give it up on one end, then immediately slice up your defense. It annoyed the purists, and it delighted those of us who enjoy chaos. Atlanta wasn't supposed to make it this far. They were a 5th seed, with a rookie coach mid-season, and yet they knocked out 2 fan-favorite teams. New York was a feel-good story, Philly was the top dog, Atlanta made both of them look helpless. The Hawks took 3 road games in Philadelphia, something almost unheard of in that arena. Simmons forgot how to shoot, Embiid turned it over too much, and Young danced right through it all. So yeah, this was a villain win. Not because Atlanta was dirty like the old Pistons, but because they stole joy from 2 of the league's biggest, loudest fan bases, and they did it with a smirk. Young didn't break the rules, he just broke expectations. He wasn't the guy anyone wanted to root for, he was the guy who made rooting feel pointless. 2008 Celtics Championship. The Boston Celtics didn't just win a title, they assembled one. They went from lottery punchline to juggernaut overnight, and the whole thing felt way too convenient. Adding Kevin Garnett and Ray Allen to Paul Pierce turned a 24-win team into a 66-win monster, and the league had no choice but to watch it steamroll. Fans didn't call it a Cinderella story, they called it a shopping spree. That roster overhaul wasn't subtle. Boston flipped half a roster for Garnett, then plucked Allen from Seattle like he was on clearance. Just like that, they had a big three that could defend, shoot, and dominate in their sleep. It was efficient, it was scary, and it annoyed pretty much everyone who wasn't from Massachusetts. Teams that actually tried to build slowly, like Cleveland or the pre-Gasol Lakers, looked at this like someone showed up to a pickup game with 3 Hall of Famers. The Celtics didn't hide behind humility either. Garnett was screaming in people's faces. Pierce was flexing like a man who'd been waiting a decade for this. Ray Allen was calmly draining threes, like the building was empty. That Ubuntu mantra? To opponents, it sounded more like a smug slogan. From the league's most loaded team, their playoff run wasn't even smooth. It took them 7 games to beat the Atlanta Hawks, who finished under 500. They barely scraped past LeBron and the Cavs in another 7-game mess. But once they hit the finals, it was like all the frustration finally got funneled into pure destruction. Kobe Bryant, trying to win his first title without Shaq, ran into a green wall, and that Game 6, a 39-point bludgeoning that felt like Boston personally erased every Laker fan's childhood. Statistically, it was lopsided. The Celtics had the best defense in the league. They held the Lakers under 95 points per game in the finals. Garnett averaged over 13 rebounds and was everywhere. Pierce dropped nearly 22 per game and won Finals MVP. Allen casually hit over 52% from deep like it was nothing. Their net rating in the playoffs was second best, and their defensive rating was first. It wasn't close, but here's where the villain part kicks in. That championship didn't feel earned in the traditional sense. It felt assembled, like Danny Ainge hit forced trade on a video game, and it somehow worked. Garnett and Allen didn't grow with the team. They showed up ready to win, and they did. And while the result was dominant, it left a sour taste for fans who preferred slow builds or homegrown chemistry. The Lakers weren't underdogs by any means, but they were seen as a little more authentic. Kobe had dragged them back to the top after Shaq's departure. Pau wasn't some flashy pickup. He was a mid-season lifesaver, but Boston's firepower snuffed them out. And in doing so, they slammed the door on anyone hoping to see Kobe complete that redemption arc. Boston's blowout win in Game 6, combined with the trash talk and the trades, made this title feel like a blueprint for future super teams. It wasn't romantic, it was clinical. And for fans of drama, tension, and a little underdog magic, it was the moment when the villains won with style and no apologies. 2023 MVP race. Joel Embiid finally got his trophy, and it felt like half the basketball world rolled their eye. He finished first in scoring, led the Sixers to 54 wins, and convinced voters that this was his time. But when the results came in, it wasn't just a win, it was a blockade. Nikola Jokic's shot at becoming the 4th player ever to win 3 straight MVPs was gone, and a lot of fans weren't exactly throwing confetti. The numbers were close, but told different stories. Embiid's 33 points per game were flashy, dominant, and loud. Jokic didn't score as much, but he nearly averaged a triple-double on a Nuggets team that finished just 1 win behind Philly. His efficiency was absurd. Over 63% shooting from the field, nearly 10 assists per game, and a player efficiency rating just ahead of Embiid's. But that wasn't enough. Embiid's campaign hit harder. He talked about why he deserved it, made sure everyone heard him, and backed it up with monster scoring nights and a little drama along the way. What really made Embiid the villain wasn't just beating Jokic, it was the way he beat him. He led the league in free throws, and not by a little. Over 11 attempts per game, drawing fouls like a magnet. Fans accused him of flopping, gaming the refs, and turning basketball into a slow-motion parade to the line. Jokic, quiet and efficient, didn't play that way. The contrast made Embiid look like a manipulator, and Jokic like a guy who just wanted to hoop. That narrative stuck. Then came the backlash. Jokic had 14.9 win shares, higher than Embiid. His value over replacement, his box plus minus, his offensive rating, all stronger. And yet Embiid got 73 first place votes. Jokic got 15. The numbers didn't scream runaway winner, but the votes did. That's where the controversy started to build. Some said it was voter fatigue. Others said it was just time to give Embiid his moment after finishing second twice. But no matter the reason, it lit up debate. Fans weren't subtle. Online posts labeled it a robbery. Jokic's supporters pointed to his calm, consistent dominance. Embiid's critics called his campaign loud and his play style annoying. And just to really twist the knife, Jokic went on to win Finals MVP while averaging over 30 points per game. So yeah, by summer, the whole MVP moment felt awkward at best. Even head-to-head, it didn't settle anything. In January, Embiid scored 34 in a win over Denver. In March, Jokic dropped a triple-double in a Nuggets victory. Each had their moment, but Embiid skipped the rematch after the All-Star break, which only added fuel to the narrative fire. This wasn't just about numbers, it was about perception. Embiid looked like he fought for the award with words and whistles. Jokic looked like he shrugged and went back to work. And for fans who wanted to see history with a three-peat, watching Embiid lift the trophy felt like the villain got the final laugh. It wasn't the worst choice, but it was definitely the most divisive. And like the Celtics in 2008 or the Pistons in 1990, Embiid's win wasn't just about greatness, it was about how much noise he made getting there. If you enjoyed this, I'm going to be posting a lot here. I would greatly appreciate it if you could subscribe. Thanks for watching.